I'm having
Hey, everybody, it's that time of year for me. It's that time of day. What time of year is it? What time of day is it?
I'm having my Korean panic attack.
That's what kind of day it is for me. How are we all doing? I hope you're all doing better than me. I am what is known as ill prepared. It's just been a day. It has been a day after Christmas, if there ever was a day after Christmas. And I don't know what that means. I just know that it means that yeah, really. Uh Not prepared. Uh, Several things were happening all at once. Um, Number one, I I spent some money on a green screen. I was gonna start doing some green screen stuff. Um, but apparently StreamYard really sucks with green screen stuff. I mean, Hayden's green screen seems to be, Ozzy Overlord. His green screen seems to be stable, but my computer was just having none of it. Uh, so I was screwing around with that right until the last possible minute. Realized it just wasn't working out, so I had to clear all that, which reminded me that I hadn't cleaned back here. I was relying on the fact that all of this crap was going to be covered, and so then I quickly had to clean the room. And in the process of that, my fuzzy nuts Alan says, "Jeff, be here soon. He's finding some pants." That was a legit thing. I was, in fact, finding some pants uh, to put them on, and generally nursing a wound. Um, yeah, I was walking home from work. It's cold. I'm tired. It's been a day, and I have a problem with walking home from work. It's only about a 30-minute walk. It's great. Good little constitutional, about 3 kilometers, about 2 miles, one way. But the only problem is literally like diagonal across the street from my office is a decent bottle shop, and I have to walk by it every day that I walk to work. And I'm a weak-willed person, so I had I had like 2.5 liters of alcohol in my backpack, along with my Samsung tablet, and I was just kind of was in zombie mode walking down the street, and I was stepping up onto a curb. I was crossing the street. I stepped up onto the curb, but I didn't raise my right foot high enough, and it caught the edge of the curb, and I knew I was going down. And I couldn't go down gracefully because I had all of this glass and liquid strapped to my back, as well as expensive computer technology. And so if I would have done like a graceful, like just kind of rolled it, like tucked and did a somersault on the sidewalk, I would have crushed my computer, crushed my bottles. I probably had giant pieces of glass poking through my back, but at least it would have been sterilized, and because of the alcohol that would be pouring into the gashes in my back. So I just kind of had to face plant because everything important was on my back. And so yeah, scuffed up the fingers, the hand a little bit. Got a knuckle here. Took some skin off the knee. But yeah, I protected the booze. I protected the booze, and I protected the computer. Thank you so much for the super chat. The Legal Vices Walker Fund. Uh, and I kind of hurt this shoulder going down. But I'm to the age of my life where I pull a muscle in my shoulder if I yawn improperly too early in the morning. Mistress Mex says, "Call a ambulance." Yeah, not whining about it, just sort of explaining part of everything that led to me being late. So yeah, that's why I was a few minutes late. Dang it, son of a bitch! Hang on, real quick. Wow. I know you didn't hear that, but I certainly did. The first video we're gonna be playing tonight, it auto refreshes every 5 minutes. That's also an annoying thing. I've been resetting that every 5 minutes. and this advertisement just went off in my ear at full volume and scared the crap out of me. Sorry about that. Oh, it was this one last Monday too, wasn't it? We kind of had a bad Monday last week. All right. So that's where we are today. A little bit late because we were dealing with green screen things. Abandoned that idea. Now I got to wonder what to do with a freaking stupid green screen that I'm probably never going to ever use again. Cleaning up the room, finding pants, going a little bit slow here with the hurt shoulder from my. And the weird thing was, I wasn't even drunk when I fell down. I don't fall down when I'm drunk. I fall down when I'm sober. Hope y'all had a great Christmas. Hope everything was as good as it could possibly be. You know, I had a lot of fun doing the cooking stream with everybody, talking to you guys while I was doing that. Surprisingly, everything turned out very well, despite the fact I was seriously multitasking while streaming and cooking. That is definitely a learned skill. You bless the people that do these live cooking streams, but because it was rough, but everything turned out great. Had a good party with about 10 friends hanging around at the cigar lounge. Smoked some good cigars, had some good whiskey, had some good wine, had the Christmas dinner. Uh, then I just came home and died. And work today. I was just dragging all day at work today, but I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys, had fun hanging out with each other on my stream and other streams, and hanging out with the streamers. For those of you that have family, hanging out with family. Those of you that are alone, hanging out with yourself or other people, or just generally taking care of yourself. But now we're moving into the last week of 2022. Pretty much going to be business as usual here on Legal Vices channel. Wednesday, our office is having our year-end party. I might be starting an hour late. I definitely will do it. The condition is how coherent I will be at that point. Sometimes they go off the rails. Most of the time they don't. But should be okay. But other than that, there's not a lot of differences going on as we move into the New Year's. I probably won't be doing a New Year's stream. If one plan works out, I'll be doing that plan. If that plan, I've got a plan B lined up. So the weekend probably be no weekend stream, like 99% possibility. If plan A and plan B go belly up, I just might sit here all weekend. Xcomer says, I went on random streams yesterday giving super chats. Jeff Face is becoming more known around YouTube. Great. Thanks, I guess. Oh, and speaking of awesomeness, Xcomer at the top of the show, I believe it was you. Was it you? Yes, it was. Xcomer Triple Z gifted 5 Legal Vices memberships to W Chops, Melissa Millerson, Bernice Conklin, KS, and Sarah P. If you were one of those lucky 5 people, thank Xcomer for gifting you 5. Well, each of you 1 Legal Vices membership. Thank you very much for that, Xcomer. That was very nice of you. All right, so let's give you the quick rundown and jump straight into this. Today, we're going to be talking about the sinking of the fishing boat Emmy Rose. It went down 2 years ago. Almost 2 years ago exactly, as a matter of fact. But me, I watch too many horror films. So literally until about 3 days ago, I have been calling this ship the Emily Rose, probably because of the haunting of Emily Rose, or the possession of Emily Rose, or whatever the hell the Emily Rose movie was called. But yeah, just as I was typing up the thumbnail for this, I was searching for pictures of the Emily Rose, and I was getting nothing. And I'm like, this is weird. I just keep getting pictures of Emily Rose and a smaller fishing boat in England called the Emily Rose. And that's when I realized it was the Emmy Rose. I've been misnaming this ship for the last 2 years. Why not? Because that's me. That's how I roll. We kind of do things here by the seat of our pants. Yeah, I'd been calling it the Emily Rose for 2 years, but it is the Emmy Rose. It's a main fishing vessel. It went down 2 years ago with all hands. All four people on board the ship died. We're going to be talking about that. We'll be deep diving that with a video from Brick and Mortar. Great guy, great channel. I'll have a link here in the video by the end. But Brick and Mortar's channel, go to it. Definitely subscribe to him. He does some of these great, casualty videos dealing with structures, buildings, bridges, ship accidents, oil platforms. We've used his videos quite a bit in the past, and I'm in contact with him in email. And probably sometime in January, one of our Maritime Monday streams in January, we'll have Brick and Mortar on here himself to talk about why he does what he does, the process that he involves himself in when researching and preparing these videos, as well as why he does it, and then we'll watch one of the videos together. That's the plan. Tomorrow will be Tuesday. What I think we're going to do tomorrow is just, as I mentioned last week, there's a bunch of news stories that I want to talk about, but none of them can really carry an entire show. So we'll probably do 4 or 5 short 15-minute deals. And what I'll do later, I'll just do them as a presentation. We can talk between the videos and whatnot, between the presentations, and then I'll just chop them up and use them also for short video uploads during the course of the week. So we'll do that tomorrow. Hit some what I think are interesting stories that need to be discussed. Wednesday, we'll be doing a Courtney Clenny interrogation video. The OnlyFans killer will be doing the previous interrogation video when she was arrested in Nevada, in Las Vegas, for assaulting her boyfriend back then. Thursday is O.J. Simpson Day. Barry Scheck's cross-examination of criminologist Dennis Fung will begin. And Friday, we will probably begin the next Courtney Clenny interrogation, which is her murder. Well, the interrogation she gave when she was being arrested for murder. What about the Kursk submarine? Did you cover that, or don't you do submarines? We did it like 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we did the Kursk. Go back in. Oh, there goes that reset button again. I'm deaf. All right, skip that ad. We're going to get right into this as quickly as possible because I never want this thing to reset again. I'm deaf again. Yeah, we did it like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So go back into the Maritime Monday playlists and look for it. That should answer all of your questions. Yeah, we did that already. It's a great story, and annoyed people at the end because I made them watch a 10-minute video just so I could show one of my watches. And for those of you that got upset about that, I was going to mention that. Yeah, I made them watch a 10-minute video so I could show them my watch that was made out of the hull of a Russian nuclear submarine, the Gepard, the Leopard. But for those of you that were upset by the fact that I made you watch a 10-minute video to show you my cool watch, it's going to happen again soon because I have another maritime related watch that I got about a month ago that I was planning on doing it at the end of this video, but I didn't get time to put everything I wanted to together. It's a Maritime Monday related watch, but we'll get to it probably in a week. All right. With that, that's what we're doing. That's what we got coming up this week. Everybody, thank you for being here. We've got a bunch of people. We're ready to go. We've got 217 concurrent viewers, 99 likes. Half of you aren't doing your job. You've been good about the likes recently, but you're just kind of falling off suddenly. Hit that like button. We know what we need to do. We need to get the likes up there. Everybody needs to like this so I can stop talking about it. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. And let's jump into it. Remember, as always, we follow the chats as best we can, but super chats get priority because you're supporting the channel with monetary donations from your hard-earned money. The least I can do is acknowledge that with priority. So we do both. There is no minimum required to talk. There is no requirement of super chats at all to chat, but we'll get to the ones we can. Guaranteed to get all the super chats. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button, which seems to work about 25% of the time. We have memberships if that's what you're into. Let's go. This is the news story after the ship went down. Sad story. The ship went down. Well, all the information's coming up. Let's do this. Let's bring up the screen. This is what. All right. Well, I'll just shut up and start. We'll let them talk about it here. Wreckage of Emmy Rose found, firm says.
Wreckage of a Maine fishing boat missing off the coast of Massachusetts has been found. Good evening, everyone. I'm Zach Blanchard, and now the families of the four men lost at sea feeling at least a little closure, knowing the discovery of the vessel could lead to answers. After 6 months, the wreckage of the fishing vessel Emmy Rose found off Cape Cod.
It's definitely a lot to take in.
Rayanne Matthews' dad, Jeff, was among those on board.
Yeah, I definitely feel some relief. I mean, now we can potentially see what happened to the boat.
According to Mine Technology, the company whose sonar technology led to the discovery, the 82-foot boat was located off the Massachusetts coast last Wednesday, just north of where a distress signal first went out back in November. All four men on board were never found.
We decided to do is dedicate this survey to the memory of the four lost souls who went down with the vessel.
Dr. Peter Ramsey helped lead the survey on this NOAA research vessel alongside the Coast Guard and the National Transportation Safety Board. He says after careful planning, the team found the Emmy Rose in just 6.5 hours on the ocean floor.
We managed to do some high-resolution passes over it the next day, and the high-resolution imagery will be used for the investigation.
A spokesperson for Coast Guard Sector Northern New England could not comment Monday, citing the ongoing investigation. After learning the news, Rayanne honored her dad, throwing flowers off the Portland pier those fishermen once called home, knowing they are at least one step closer to knowing how they died.
Still just wondering. Nobody knows still what happened.
Again, that investigation here continues. The Coast Guard says it is working with several agencies.
All right, so that is the basic part of the storm here. If we
속도 1등.
shut up, God, that's what I've been hearing every 5 minutes for the last hour. The remains of the main base fishing vessel Emmy Rose were discovered off the coast of Massachusetts months after it vanished, with all four crew members on board. 82-foot boat was located. It's a sad story again. You know, it's nothing that's going to get happy. But, you know, it's hard to find a good, happy Maritime Monday story when it comes right down to it, because we deal with accidents, we deal with tragedies, we deal with collisions and sinkings. Yeah, Joe Toy, like I said, that's what I've been dealing with every 5 minutes for the last hour. So the two times I freaked out and swore earlier on in this program, that's exactly why. Is this the perfect storm boat? And that's been asked by others. No, that was a different story. The movie Perfect Storm was based on it was a sword fishing boat called the Andrea Gale. And that took place, that ship was lost in 1990, 1991, somewhere around there. This is a totally different deal. This went down 2 years ago. So it's just a tragedy. Fishing boats are incredibly dangerous, whether it's crab fishing, shrimp boats, whatever it is. Just fishing boats are dangerous work. He said right now we're working on cases involving 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 or 5 cases now of fishing vessels that have sunk that I'm working on. They're just dangerous. And so that's why I have weird viewing habits when it comes to reality TV. I have some really weird vices, like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is one of my things. My 600-pound life, that's another thing. But I love watching The Deadliest Catch. I think that's the most realistic, the most real of the reality TV shows that are out there, because it shows you how dangerous it is. It shows you how people get hurt, ships sink. It sucks. And they get paid good if the fishing's good. We need a feel-good story like the saga of Bodie McBoatface. I never thought about that. We should do the saga of Bodie McBoatface just to kind of liven our mood here. See, now Costco's feeling spicy, and Brandon Farron, yeah, you people that are in that area, this is still fresh in your memory because it's only a couple of years old. Well, before we dive into the brick and mortar story, we need to talk a little bit about liability. This is a news story that addresses some liability issues.
The owner of the Emmy Rose, a boat which sank in November, claiming 4 lives, says it's not at fault for what happened. Today, the owner, called Boat Aaron and Melissa Incorporated, is asking a Maine federal court judge to declare that it is not liable for damages in the sinking. In the court filings, the company says the sinking and deaths were not caused by any defect on the Emmy Rose or any action or inaction on part of the owners, so they should not be liable for damages. The boat sank off Provincetown in November while headed to Gloucester, Massachusetts.
So this is a story of the owner wanting to avoid liability. I mean, it sounds cold, it sounds cruel, it sounds heartless, but at the end of the day, if you've done nothing wrong, you don't want to pay damages. And for the fishing boat owner, in ordinary case, for a fishing boat owner to be found liable, there would have had to be a problem that the fishing boat owner knew about, or could have known about, knew about, or should have known about, I guess is a better way of saying it. But if it's just one of these freak accidents where the owner's done nothing wrong, he's managed the ship properly, has qualified crew, where it's just a legit freak accident. Of course, they don't want to have the liability, and that's why we have these force majeure clauses, the act of God clauses. If there's a plane crashes onto your ship, I did nothing wrong, and it's not something I should be for you. If there's a volcano erupts and or something, like there's a tornado, if there's a war that breaks out, if you hit a landmine or something like that, you can avoid liability. But also in the maritime industry, there's a limitation of liability that can happen as well. Mistress May, I guess we'll be talking about the findings from investigations and things. So anyway, anybody that know the answers to these questions, that knows the spoilers, no spoilers, please. But we have a limitation of liability. Most countries will have some sort of limitation scheme where you can limit your liability for the death. It's depending on what country you're from and what laws apply, to a certain amount of money per ton of your vessel. So the smaller vessels would have a smaller liability. And if you get these gigantic 250,000 ton ships, the liability is essentially limitless. But so let's say you under law, you can limit your liability to 100 whatevers. And if everybody claims 300 against your ship, then the courts will say, okay, the limit is 100. Everybody's claiming 300, so we will divide up this limited amount of liability proportionally amongst the claimants according to what the claims are valid and what they're able to support. But it leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. Like, why should a ship owner be able to limit his liability for someone's death? Or why should a company be able to limit their liability for all of the cargo that's on a ship if the ship sinks? The answer, again, is basically one of numbers. If you can limit your liability, then you continue to stay in the fishing industry. But if there's something that's just if every ship owner can be held liable for a limitless amount of money, that causes problems. People don't want to take the risk. And yeah, we should do a show about limitation of liability one of these days. but there are, certain countries, I mean, every country has different laws. There are some international conventions the countries can sign on to, but there's always going to be a list of things that you can limit your liability for. And if it's an intentional act, if you intentionally ram your ship into somebody, you're not going to be able to limit your liability. But yeah, you can limit your liability for accidents. And I don't want to talk. I don't want to say this country does this, 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 and this, because every country is different. Some things you can limit your liability for in some places, other places you can't. We should do kind of a comparison. I'll put together something, because this is always an issue that comes up when we raise the legal questions of compensation for deaths or cargo damage. We had a couple things real quick here. Oh yeah, we already did that one. Check your Twitter. You mentioned everyone else. Check your Twitter mentions. Get everyone else to reply to Mr. Beast that you were the best YouTuber. Well, I appreciate that thought and that sentiment, Marv, and deeply appreciate the super chat to go along with it. If y'all want to do that, go right ahead. The chances of that actually succeeding are statistically zero, but it'd be fun. Let's see how far we can go with it. Stingy says, old man down, old man deaf. Time to recreate Old Yeller. Let's go, Jeff. Nice. Thank you. A Maritime Monday, and it's my birthday. This is a good day already. Oh, thank you, Danny Nelson, and happy birthday to you. We'll do you a quick birthday cheers here. Why not? Danny Nelson, thank you for being here. Thank you for your super chat. One more time around the planet. Kind of probably sucks you have a birthday on December 26th, but I hope you got 2 full sets of presents. Cheers. I say that because my sister's birthday is December 16th. And one year I bought her a birthday/Christmas present. And I learned you just don't do that. Now, the reason we went through these super chats was here. Jeff, American Dreamer asked, Jeff, do you work for an insurance company? No, but my law firm, the majority of the maritime work that I do is on behalf of ship owners and their insurance companies. So I deal with limitation of liability issues all the time. So that's my thing. I don't work directly for an insurance company, but we do all of the protection and indemnity clubs like Lloyd's and north of England. They're the P&I clubs. They're sort of ship owner insurance companies where everybody pays into a fund and they sort of act as a mutual insurance kind of thing. We also do cargo insurance and hull insurance claims and things like that. So that's my maritime background. What did I say? I think you hit your. Did I say? I didn't say. Please tell me I didn't say moon. I don't know what I'm saying. What did I say, American Dreamer? I'm confused. Oh, well. Oh, mine's the 16th too. It's pants, yeah. That's kind of the consensus from my sister. Did I say around the planet? Oh, at least I didn't say moon. But I guess if you went around the planet like in a year, that would be fun. Spend a year going around the planet. Oh, people are telling me I had it right. Whatever. Don't confuse me. I'm old. See, I said sun. That's what I thought. But I could misspeak because you're reading something, you're thinking ahead, you're trying to keep all your signals crossed, and sometimes you just trust your mouth to say what your brain was thinking, and that doesn't always work out properly. But yeah, so my understanding of this is ultimately the owners it's usually the owner's insurance company, was able to limit their liability to a statutory amount, which we'll get to after we begin and finish this video here from Brick and Mortar that deals with this. Oh, see, we have a fight already. No, you said one more year around the planet. See, but other people say sun. So there you go. This is one of these things. Some of you heard one thing, some of you heard the other. I don't know, so I'll just have to go back. I'll just have to go back and listen to it later to find out what I did. But before we go, Legal Vices, says Corn Pop. So I have a bone to pick with you. I've been giving you marketing advice to do a poll for the likes and subs for like 6 months. Joe did it, and it was a banging success. I have no idea what that means. I've never seen you give me any advice about this. Marketing advice to do a poll for likes and subs. I don't know what that means. You'll have to explain it more. Don't just tell me what you did or what you're doing, because obviously I didn't do it. So, anywho, email me or something. If you did it again, do it again. But all right, let's not get too far off track. Let's jump into this. Let's start the main feature of the show. We'll talk about the accident, talk about the findings that the National Transportation Safety Board, their preliminary findings, recommendations, and how it relates to some of the other cases we've talked about. Let's get this thing started.
On the morning of Monday, November 23rd, 2020, at about 01:30 Eastern Standard Time, the fishing vessel Emmy Rose sank roughly 20 miles off the Massachusetts coast near Provincetown, with no reported distress calls or signs of trouble received from the crew. As of the making of this video, the NTSB and U.S. Coast Guard's investigation into the vessel's demise is still ongoing. This will be an in-depth look at the rescue efforts, the vessel's history, and much of the authorities' findings so far. And as always, all sources, references, and featured media are linked in description. At 1:29 a.m., Monday, November 23rd, a transmission was received from an emergency position indicating radio beacon, or EPIRB. Every EPIRB transmits a signal unique to its respective entity or vessel. Vessel-mounted EPIRBs are designed as a last resort distress call, triggered only once submerged. They float to the surface and begin transmitting pertinent data like coordinates and vessel identifiers. This information is received via satellite and forwarded to rescue coordinating personnel. Based on U.S. Coast Guard reports, their Boston sector location would head up search and rescue efforts, dispatching an Air Station Cape Cod-based MH-60 Jayhawk helicopter. First on scene approximately an hour and a half after the EPIRB pinged initially, followed shortly thereafter by a Coast Guard 47-foot motor lifeboat out of Station Provincetown, along with cutters Vigorous and Key Largo. Atlantic waters in this area are around 50 degrees or less in November. All units on scene searching throughout the night. An empty life raft, debris patch, and the EPIRB were the only findings upon arrival. The conditions at the time of initial search were reported to be 30-knot winds with up to 8-foot-high seas.
So this is the problem. Crab boats and other boats, like, they fish in extreme conditions, especially in the winter when the crabs run. You get the squid boats. They fish a lot around the Antarctic areas. It seems like the fish are just kind of on the move when the weather's really crappy. And you get the extra bad things. And you get the cold temperatures, the cold weather, the high waves, the winds. And these EPIRBs, like, as you just described, they float. They're not fixed in one area. So even when you get to an EPIRB, it's kind of sort of relative to where it used to be. And you have to track things like waves, winds, currents, and whatnot, and sort of use that to be part of your search pattern. So if you're lucky enough that someone on a lifeboat that triggers an EPIRB, you're probably better off than if it was just floating out there all by itself.
Challenging, but not considered extreme for this area of the Atlantic. At first light Monday morning, a Coast Guard HC-144 would be dispatched, helping to widen the search area. Efforts would continue through Tuesday, November 24th. After 38 hours covering approximately 2,066 square miles, nothing more than the initial findings, the empty life raft, debris patch, and EPIRB would be found on the surface.
Okay, now what this is showing, this is showing the search patterns that the boats carried out, the search boats carried out. So you just get to run these zigzag patterns in coordinated grids. So you can see where the searching was the most intense and most complete, and then it kind of goes out to the other areas. And they searched about 5.5 square miles. Yeah, it's initially, well, holy crap, yeah, our crews searched continuously over the course of 38 hours, covering 2,066 square miles.
Coast Guard Command would suspend the search by roughly 5:45 p.m. Tuesday, November 24th. All 4 souls aboard were lost. The vessel would remain undiscovered until May of 2021, when the NTSB and U.S. Coast Guard collaborated with MIND Technology, Stelvagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, and NOAA. At this point, the team was only using side-scan sonar, just confirming its location. Viewed from above, the Emmy Rose would be seen for the first time in 6 months. A clear picture of the fishing vessel sitting upright on the seafloor, outrigger still extended, at a depth of about 800 feet. This would have...
That's 800 feet is literally in the middle of the ocean. That is so freaking deep. But I think it's interesting that the sonar has shown the vessel just, I mean, it didn't break apart. It didn't rip open. I mean, even the fishing arms were out on it. So it sank essentially in one piece. That's something that's going to come up in the later in the later NTSB investigations.
of course confirm the vessel had sunk,
I saw
but
Rose.
more importantly,
I'm
its
Corn.
location did coincide with where the automated distress signal originated. These images would provide little to no insight, though, as to why this tragedy took place. 4 months later, in September of 2021, investigators teamed up once again, this time with the assistance of a remotely operated vehicle from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and the National Science Foundation. Deployed from Cutter Sycamore, these images from the ROV are all that's been published by authorities thus far. So it's unclear whether any images gathered from the September excursion provided clarity into the vessel's unusual demise. In the meantime, throughout the remainder of 2020, and even as recently as September 2021, multiple interviews have been conducted by the NTSB and Coast Guard in an effort to determine cause and potential safety recommendations. Although it can provide little in the way of actual closure, some of the interviews were pretty eye-opening as I read through the transcripts. The way the Emmy Rose was handled, according to interviewees who, to their credit, despite such a difficult situation, were very forthcoming. This painted a picture that was at least enough to, so far, create all these recommendations you see here. The recommendations and interviews we will cover in this video. However, the Emmy Rose didn't start its life as a groundfish net dragger. The booming ship industry in the 1970s and 80s brought about the production of outrigger shrimp boats in staggering numbers to keep up with market demand. The Emmy Rose was, originally, one such vessel, purpose-built for shrimp trawling, completed in 1987 by Tommy Nguyen Shipyard out of New Iberia, Louisiana. From the records I found, going by the original name of Miss Elizabeth III. The vessel would change hands and go by several other names after that. In 94, changed to Miss Monica. In 95, changed to Virgin Steel. 98, changed to Captain Huey. Then in 2001, renamed to Sasha Lee when it was purchased by the now infamous Carlos Rafael and moved to New England for the new purpose it would serve throughout the next 15 plus years. This wasn't unique to the Sasha Lee though. Shrimp trawling comes with some of the highest bycatch rates in commercial fishing, meaning the style and method of netting used hauls in multiple other unwanted species that aren't shrimp, chief among them sea turtles. And bycatch species in any form of commercial fishing aren't always just simply thrown back unaffected. With regulations clamping down on Gulf Coast shrimp trawling toward the late 90s and turn of the century, with shrimp farming starting to contribute significantly to the U.S. shrimp supply around the same time, there was understandably a glut of shrimp trawlers becoming available on the market, looking for new homes. Ground fishing in New England waters has been an industry staple for hundreds of years. Cod, haddock, yellowtail, pollock, to name a few. However, commercially fishing for groundfish requires a different method of net dragging compared to shrimp trawling on the Gulf Coast. The New Bedford and Gloucester commercial fleets, two major hubs for ground fishing, are partly comprised of large numbers of former shrimp boats purchased and brought up from the Gulf. Many of the boats tend to be more flat-bottomed than the purpose-built trawlers of the Northeast. In addition, shrimp and prawn trawling uses what are known as outriggers. These long, heavy booms are used exclusively for dragging dual nets along the bottom, but important to note, are not used in the style of net dragging that's most popular off the New England coast. Instead, for
So those outriggers, that's what you saw protruding from the sides of these sonar videos.
groundfish applications, the former shrimp boats are heavily modified, with ramps and net spools on the stern, and sometimes additional booms are added, pointing sternward. The nets dragged directly aft of the vessel in either dual or single configurations. These methods do not utilize these heavy port and starboard outrigging booms. As you'll see in the transcripts of several interviews, the outriggers tend to be more of a liability in these repurposed shrimp boats. The notorious Carlos Rafael, known locally as the Codfather, according to several media outlets, in 2017, the New Bedford fleet owner was convicted on multiple charges of conspiracy, false labeling of fish, bulk cash smuggling with the assistance of a local sheriff's deputy, tax evasion, and falsifying federal records.
Surprise, here comes the ugly head of greed and corruption into the fishing industry. Like I've been saying, the amount of mafia involvement, the amount of corruption, the fishing industry was historically a very, very dirty business. It still is in a lot of parts of the world. And you're always looking to maximize your profits, minimize your expenses, cut corners when you can. It's a dangerous, dangerous business, not just because of the nature of the work as well, but because you can meet some nefarious people.
In addition to Raphael's nearly 4-year jail sentence, he was also ordered to pay $3 million in civil claims and give up all involvement in commercial fishing permanently. Raphael was reportedly caught when baited by agents posing as, quote, wealthy Russian businessmen seeking to launder large sums of money through his companies.
Okay, no, he wasn't taken down. He wasn't taken down by the fake Russian mafia. He was taken down by the fake Russian mafia. It was agent, as he just said, it was agents masquerading as Russian mafia. So they were fake Russian mafia, not fake Russian. It wasn't a mafia made up of fake Russians.
He was also ordered to forfeit at least 13 vessels from his fleet the prosecutors say were directly involved in his long-running scam of lying about the value and species of the fish he landed. Vessels like My Way, the Athena, the Sasha Lee, amongst others. The Sasha Lee having been in New England for more than 15 years by that point. In the years surrounding this, though, the Sasha Lee would have its own share of incidents.
So remember, we were talking about this before. There was actually a time when Korea was not importing crabs from China because a bunch of Chinese fishermen got caught stuffing lead weights into the crabs to give the crabs more weight so that they would get a better value because they weigh the fish catch. So you purchase the fish catch per ton. So you want your fish to weigh more, you stuff lead weights in it and sell the crabs with lead weights. So you'd literally get people in restaurants opening up their crabs for their crab dinner and finding lead weights inside their crab. And lead poisoning is not something you want to get involved in. So there is corruption at all levels of the fishing industry, from the boat owners to the people that buy it and everyone in between. I'm not saying that everybody is, but it is so extensive that you always have to be careful of this. And we're already looking here just at the nefarious history of this boat before it became the Emmy Rose.
Although not completely uncommon amongst fishing vessels in this area. In September 2010, the fishing boat experienced a total loss of propulsion at sea when the propeller shaft sheared. No one was injured and the vessel was towed back to port safely. This resulted in an estimated $55,000 in damages. In January of 2016, the Sasha Lee would report flooding in the fish hold due to water ingress from the propeller shaft. The shaft had been inspected just 2 days prior after becoming entangled and fouled by stray line that wrapped around the shaft and prop. This line was removed, but unbeknownst to the crew, the incident had caused further unseen damage to the shaft, causing it to eventually lose its watertight seal while out to sea. The U.S. Coast Guard and Good Samaritan vessel Triunfo would respond in time to aid the Sasha-Lee, the Coast Guard providing 2 auxiliary pumps to help contain the flooding, and once the shaft was secured enough to mitigate water ingress, the fishing vessel Triunfo then provided the tow back into port. No injuries were reported, and this resulted in an estimated $20,000 in damages. In November of 2018, the Sasha-Lee was escorting fellow fleet vessel My Way to Newport News in Virginia. The Sasha-Lee experienced a sudden loss of hydraulic fluid, which subsequently damaged its clutch plates. This prevented the vessel from going into forward or reverse, a loss of propulsion at sea. The My Way would end up towing the Sasha-Lee to port safely, with no injuries reported. The Coast Guard later determining this loss of hydraulic pressure was due to a lack of maintenance. Purchased in New Bedford when many Carlos boats finally went up for sale all at once.
So, I mean, this is kind of an important thing, and this is something we're dealing with in a case right now. You get these old ships, and this ship has a history of problems with the propeller. I commend you, chat. I commend you all for the adult behavior, for the maturity with which you handled them repeatedly talking about wrapping things around your shaft. I appreciate you not going down that road. I was waiting for it and it never happened. So congratulations. And my hat goes off to you. The propeller shaft is the shaft that turns the propeller. So here, this sheared off, and then they had to repair that. And then there was some other leakage around the shaft. So there's already problems with water getting into the ship. There's propeller problems. And then there's a hydraulic problem later. And the problem is, as these ships get older and older and older, there's more and more things that are corroding and are falling apart and are rusting. Things that you didn't even know were there. You can have a ballast water line that goes through some strange part of the ship, and suddenly water is pouring into your ship, and you don't know where it's coming from. And you get the schematics for the ship, and you find out that this pipe takes a weird turn somewhere, and a big hole has rusted in it. Or you find there's some sort of weird overflow valve that is too close to another valve, and say your oil temperature and your oil pressure goes up, and you start spilling oil somewhere, and somehow that gets into your water supply. There's just all these weird things that can happen when a ship is old, and because you can't have maintenance done on every single square inch of the ship, because you'd have to tear the ship apart for that. So some of these weird things start happening. And this ship is so far, it looks like a prime candidate for one of these things. You have a guy who's involved in all sorts of corrupt practices, who's trying to do everything he can to get as much money as he can with spending as little as possible on the ships. This one ship has gone through several accidents. It's getting older. He's going to jail. He hasn't maintained them. And now they're selling off his fleet all at the same time. So you can see why there'd be some. And when you buy a ship, when you sell a ship, and when you buy a ship, you conduct your own inspection. But again, it's not let's go over every inch of the ship. You have a checklist, a very detailed checklist, but it doesn't cover absolutely 100% of the things that can go wrong or can wear out on a ship. And so even though if you're going to buy the ship, you would conduct your own survey of the condition of the vessel, you're not going to catch every single little thing that's possibly wrong with it. It's kind of like a car. You want to buy a car, it's always wise to have it inspected by someone. They're not going to be able to catch every single internal engine problem. You just hope you got enough and you have a good idea of the actual condition that it's in at the time you purchase it.
The Sasha-Lee would change ownership in May of 2020. Owner Boat Aaron and Melissa Incorporated would rename the Sasha-Lee to Emmy Rose. It cannot be overstated just how bizarre the circumstances of this vessel's total loss were. With no record of any distress calls, no victims, survival suits, or life preservers found, no communications out of the ordinary in the afternoon, evening, or as the events unfolded to or from any of the crew. The interviews also revealed that vessels like the Emmy Rose were known to routinely stay in contact with loved ones on shore, managers, owners, shore-based support, but most crucially, fishing vessels maintaining contact with each other when out to sea, especially when fishing the same general area. It's a tight-knit community out there, and they never hesitate to contact each other when it comes to collision avoidance, vessel issues, or even just idle chatter. They aren't in some sort of fierce competition with one another where they avoid contact. In fact, it tends to be the total opposite. Now again, just to make one more point clear, information in this video is not meant to imply what was actually causal in the loss of Emmy Rose. This is just what I've researched and substantiated in the vessel's history, what investigators have gathered thus far, and also provides insight on, at least to me personally, a very intriguing investigation process, made even more interesting when there is so little to go on, with the root cause sitting there, metaphorically, just out of reach. When fishing vessel Aaron and Melissa II sank in 2018, 70 miles off the coast of Portland, Maine, another boat owned by Aaron and Melissa Incorporated, and perhaps worthy of a video on its own, the vessel had encountered heavy weather after struggling with water ingress throughout the night. According to authorities, wind gusts up to 50 knots and seas up to 20 feet high. From the time of unrecoverable list to completely underwater was about a 3-hour window. Despite some of the crew having worked to the point of exhaustion in the days leading up, fatigue that can happen all too often in the industry, they were all able to don life suits, call the Coast Guard, and inform their port engineer of the situation so that their onshore support could help maintain contact with the Coast Guard once the vessel was completely submerged. All 4 crew were rescued successfully when the Coast Guard's helicopter arrived roughly 2 hours after the distress call.
See, now that's an important thing to note as well. When you're dealing with an accident, if you have hours like this, there's no reason why there should be any loss of life. And they said that it was 3 hours from the time it was in an unrecoverable list until it sank. But there's still that amount of time from when the ship is behaving normally until it gets to an unrecoverable list. And we talked about that in several other incidents, particularly in the Ocean Ranger oil platform case, where once you get beyond a certain point, you're just going to go over. There is no coming back from that list, from that leaning over to the side. And they still had 3 hours after they got to that point before they went under. So everybody on this other ship could get out. Everybody has their life jackets on. Everybody has their cold weather survival gear on. They can still they can maintain contact with the Coast Guard and things like that. So that's an ideal situation. So if there are situations like the Emmy Rose where things happen quickly, you can presume things happen quickly when nobody is recovered and there's no contact and nothing. So something apparently happened quickly enough that there was no hope of getting help and no hope of getting into the survival gear, no hope of recovering from the accident or whatever it was that happened. But we'll get more into what the preliminary findings of the NTSB are as we go along. But excuse me, first punch through a couple of these. Hey, Jeff, don't know if you've done it already, but a possible entry for Maritime Monday is the story of PT 109. There's a good famous case. That's possible. Sky is a neighborhood. Jeff, how do you prove if the ship owners are liable or not if the ship is sunk or not found? Well, at that point, it sort of becomes incumbent. The burden of proof is on the owners to prove that they weren't negligent, to prove that they did everything possible. I mean, if a ship goes down, you can pretty much determine that somebody did something wrong. I mean, the burden is on you to prove that everything was proper, that everything was properly maintained, that it couldn't have been anything else. It's a very unideal situation when there's no records whatsoever as to why the ship went down, when there's no witnesses, no reasons, no calls to Coast Guards, no calls to companies, when it's just the vessel is here and the vessel disappears. That's a bad situation. I mean, then everything is up in the air. Because the families go, well, the ship wasn't properly maintained, or they can keep throwing out all of these possibilities. And then it's incumbent upon the owners to prove that, okay, that our maintenance was up to date, or the crew wasn't being overworked. It's a rough road, but I suppose avoiding liability can be possible in some circumstances. I mean, it's difficult to answer just a broad question like that because literally every case is fact specific. What's available, what's known about the ship, what's known about the history, where is it? I mean, for example, one of these ships that just went down, one of the cases I'm working on, can't get into too much detail about it, but no real communication, and it's looking like ice might be the culprit. But then, if ice is the culprit, did you know about the ice? Could you have known about the ice? Could you avoided ice? It's very, very, very fact specific. Wolfman, we addressed your fake Russian comment. And Durna, if you're driving a commercial truck, you're personally held responsible for the truck being messed up. If you're in the middle of the sea, is that the boss's problem? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like I said, in these cases where something goes wrong with the ship, ultimately the fallback position is maintenance. The owner has the duty to properly maintain the ship. And if something rusts out, whether you knew that something existed or not, if something rusts out and that causes damage to the ship or sinks the ship or whatnot, yeah, there's a good chance you're going to get held liable for not properly maintaining the ship. Let's jump back into this here.
Recovering them from their life raft. Of all the quote Carlos boats lined up to choose from, the parties who purchased the soon-to-be Emmy Rose in May of 2020, upon seeing the Sasha Lee, the future Emmy Rose engineer stating, "The engine was in pretty good shape, actually," which I was surprised because the boat was a Carlos boat that came from New Bedford, and the engine wasn't in bad shape. When asked by investigators what drew him to the Sasha Lee in the lineup, the Emmy Rose manager stating, "The steel was in good shape on it, had a history of being a very good boat by the previous owners, and it was an all-around good boat. There was a whole bunch of boats for sale, but not all good ones, just a very comfortable sea boat. She was just well laid out, plenty of power, plenty of on-deck power for winches and whatnot." The Emmy Rose owner stating, "The only thing about the Emmy Rose that I saw was it needed a good paint job, and that was it." When investigators asked, "So nothing structurally that caused any concern?" "No, not at all," was the owner's reply. However, it must be pointed out, in addition to the modifications from outrigger trawling to stern net trawling, when the vessel entered the Carlos fleet, like many other vessels of its type in New Bedford, the Sasha Lee also received these massive steel bulwarks that raised the gunwale 4 to 6 feet. Somewhat common amongst these fishing boats in New England, the additional bulwark is meant to provide more protection from the elements for workers on the main deck. A former Emmy Rose deckhand telling authorities, "I think that the boats aren't that stable. Carlos had added a lot of extra steel up around the rails and stuff on them, which is what weighs them down a lot."
Well, see, and that's where you have to start questioning things. You start adding stuff, and especially, I mean, ordinarily, if you're going to add on to the ship, if you're going to completely refit the ship to be something other than it was originally created for, you have to do a lot of engineering work. You have to do a lot of calculations, a lot of structural engineering. And I'm kind of guessing that given what we know about Carlos, the evil guy, I'm kind of thinking he probably might not have gone through all of the proper steps for engineering and drafting and preparing the schematics for and carrying out the refitting of the vessel in a proper manner. Hey, Flux, welcome. Wake up. We're talking about a ship accident up in the Maine area, up in your area, the Emmy Rose from 2 years ago. But yeah, so you've got this going on where I don't think Carlos probably went through all of the proper steps when he was refitting the ship. Again, I have no way of knowing one way or the other, but I'm kind of thinking, it doesn't sound like the kind of guy that would do it. You're just weld some more stuff on here. And the more stuff you put on in a place where it doesn't belong, you're going to start messing with the stability and the balance of the vessel. There's a famous case here in Korea, which if you know me, I will not talk about, where this may or may not have, wink wink, played a very large part in the accident that I don't talk about. But you just can't just start sticking stuff on the side of a ship, tons of metal, tons of gear on the back, without going through the proper safety calculations, the stability calculations, all of the engineering that's required to keep this thing floating. And the problem, did he go by the name Honest Carlos? And the problem is when you buy these ships, you just kind of assume that it was done properly. Otherwise, it shouldn't be out there.
They carry way too much fuel, which makes them heavy as it is. The storm wall from behind the wheelhouse back, like almost to where the door comes up, like 6 feet tall, that was all add-on. Up around the bow, it was like a whole extra, 4 to 6 feet of rail added up around the whole bow of the boat. And then he had a bunch of extra rigging added up on top, like a real big mast and stuff. So yeah, the boats had a lot of extra weight on. The Sasha Lee received a stability test around 2001 or 02. Since these were the approximate years the conversion was made, the naval architect that performed the test stating, "Obviously the outriggers and the shrimping fleet are used for the nets, and I try to explain to the guys, outriggers do not add to the stability of a fishing boat. They detract from the stability of a fishing boat."
Yeah, it's not like a tightrope walker who has the pole out there to balance him. Because that shifts, he uses that, the tightrope walker uses his pole to, if he goes to one side, he adds balance to the other side to pull him upright. On a ship, this just adds more weight. You start to list to port. This additional weight is going to list you more to port. And so I think the point we're getting is they didn't need to have these outriggers on this ship.
What they do is because they're away aloft, they are ride controlled. They're like a shock absorber. So you've got the outrigger lowered and the bird in the water. The sole purpose is to slow the roll of the boat, to make the boat more comfortable and more workable. And these boats, when they're in the Gulf, they have a bulwark that runs from bow to stern. And what the guys up here do is they build that bulwark up. So if you look at the Sasha Lee and Emmy Rose, the walk space between the house and the side is enclosed to the deck house. But all of these are standard features you would see on a boat that was converted over. He'd go on to say, regarding the outriggers, typically they don't pass stability if they're up, so it's pretty standard that we put that in our stability booklets. You'll find that most of our stability booklets will say that they've got to lower those things. You've got something like 30, 40 feet in the air, so you take the center of gravity, that's 40 feet above the baseline of the boat that weighs about 1.5 tons. They do not enhance the stability of the boat. They are just there as shock absorbers. They just make the boat roll less when they're deployed. These Gulf coasters are very flat bottom, hard chine boats, so it has good initial stability. The outriggers make the boat workable, and it's gotten to the point where it's so ingrained in these guys, everybody's got them. When asked about weight creep by investigators or weight slowly added over time due to more subtle modifications that can still affect stability, investigators showing pictures of the boat's evolution over time after becoming the Sasha Lee and then Emmy Rose, the naval architect stated, "Comparing the boat to when it happened, the net reels, the diameter has been increased pretty dramatically, and she's gotten a second boom. Those are the things that I can see just from the pictures. If you look at the pictures, it looks like they may have added as much as 4 feet to the diameter, which means they're carrying bigger gear. Again, just looking at the photographs, that jumps out at us." Expanding on the matter of stability, investigators also question the method of fuel usage from saddle tanks on either side of the vessel. In these types of fishing vessels, they're not using all the fuel that pulls into the engine. The unused excess fuel gets pumped back into whichever tank the captain has chosen in a process nicknamed burn and return. Now, I've been unable to determine what, if any, other fuel oil tanks the Emmy Rose had beyond those shown in the Sasha Lee stability reports from back in 02, which shows only these 2 large saddle tanks. To burn and return from one side of the vessel to the other requires frequent stability management as the center of gravity shifts. This is exacerbated by the amount of fish in the holds, the ice used to keep the fish cool, saltwater ballast, dirty oil, weather conditions, the vessel's current activity or maneuvering requirements, and so on. A third-party condition and value survey was conducted in New Bedford in August of 2019, where the Sasha Lee was hauled out and evaluated. The survey published by investigators, unfortunately, contains only pictures, timestamps, and brief descriptions. It does not go into detail about what surveyors thought of conditions or the value they determined. The most recent safety inspection was July of 2020, with the Marine Safety Inspector checking out immersion suits, extinguishers, flares, the life raft, and other more subtle items like EPIRB batteries, safety sticker placement, routine stuff.
So yeah, those are the things, those are the safety inspection things, clearly. the emergency equipment. It says here it ultimately passed the inspection. But as I was talking about the dangers of the ships and the stability of things, as they were saying, just which oil tank are you using the fuel at the same rate from the tanks? Because if one's empty and one's full of diesel, it's going to list to that side. Plus the fish catch that's in there. Plus you've got the weight of the ice that's keeping the fish catch cool. And you've got the bilge water. Where is that at? Where are your ballast tanks at? What's the position of your outriggers? All of these things are constantly affecting all of the stability of the vessel, and the captain's got to be aware of these things and got to know these things.
The Emmy Rose ultimately passing inspection. By most interview accounts available, and from much of what I can find, the Emmy Rose's captain was a competent, respected, and very experienced ship's master, fisherman, and engineer. He knew all of his boat's systems very well, and would insist on performing any maintenance needed himself whenever they were at sea. The boat also had, for the most part, the same crew ever since its purchase in May of 2020. Deckhand number 2 and the captain had known each other and fished commercially together for years. The crew also regarded as highly competent and experienced fishermen and mariners. That fateful night, November 23rd, the captain reportedly had plans to unload the ketch in Gloucester and then make preparations to head right back out for a few more days. All 4 aboard reportedly got along very well and were not upset to be working a schedule that had them heading right back out to fish, potentially through the upcoming holiday. Interviewees stating those on board would not have felt obligated to remain if they needed to disembark for the holiday. The crew got along well, but just like any other commercial fishing operation, it wasn't always smooth sailing.
So to speak.
A former fill-in deckhand, who was rather forthcoming about his most recent journey, roughly August or September 2020, aboard the Emmy Rose, did have the following to say. And keep in mind, this seasoned deckhand was only aboard to fill in temporarily. By his own admission, is also captain of Emmy Rose's sister ship, the Allagash. We was on our way back to port, and we started transferring fuel, which I didn't know about. I was down in the hole with the green guy showing him what to do. There was another.
So the green guy's the new guy. He's down in the hold showing the green guy what to do, the newbie what to do. And when they're talking about transferring the fuel, it's like from one tank to another. They're moving fuel from one tank to another to keep that stability up. And Ryu can ask, so this death trap, boat, no have a chance in bad weather. It does. You just have to be conscious. You have to be, first of all, you have to make sure that all these modifications are done properly and within spec and within stability calculations, which seems iffy to me. But, ships are kind of by nature death traps. So many things can go wrong with them. But if you know what you're doing and if you're in control of the situation, they're not that bad, of course. So if you're managing your bilge, if you're managing your ballast, if you're managing the weight of the fish catch, if you're considering the weight of any ice that's being used in the hold for cooling the fish catch, if you're keeping your fuel levels even, if you're doing all of these things you need to do, then it's a fairly safe thing you're doing. But that presupposes the ship itself is safe. So there's more to running even a small fishing boat than just starting the engine and driving along. There really are a lot of things years and years and years it takes to become a captain of a vessel, because you have to know everything about your ship essentially. So yeah, if everything is okay, if everything is properly managed and the ship itself is seaworthy, you're in a good condition. But it's when things start to go wrong, when your ship isn't as seaworthy as you may have been led to believe it was, that's when the problems begin, and that's when things start to happen. All right, we've got caught up on all of the chats. The sea is always right. Again, Adriana, stop with that Lord of the Rings stuff around here. The chat, just like the chat is always right. All righty, let's go.
Another guy at the wheel, and I noticed the boat started listing pretty bad. So I decided to come up out of the hole, but when I did, I stepped into waist deep water. And, I wasn't very happy about it. Obviously, I went straight to the wheelhouse. There's a guy standing up there watching TV. And, I keep thinking about this as to how the boat could have sank. And had I not come up out of the hole that night when I did, another 10 minutes, she'd have rolled right over. And that was with somebody awake at the wheel. It definitely was not a fun scene.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. It's, again, everything can be going right. You've just got one guy who's on his watch duty that's not paying attention, and crap happens. I mean, I just so many times when there's a ship collision or something, I've listened to the VDR data, the voyage data recorder, which is essentially the black box for the ship. You interview the crew members, like, well, what was going on the bridge? Oh, well, I was sitting in my chair. I was looking out of the window. Occasionally I would go back to the chart room and do something back there, but then I would come out and I'd sit on my chair. Well, what was the helmsman doing? What was the able-bodied seaman doing? Oh, he was using his binoculars and looking out the window, scanning the horizon for other vessels. He was checking the radar regularly. And everybody's doing everything, but then you listen to the voyage data recorder, which does everything, including record the audio on the bridge. It turns out they're having a party on the bridge. You've got music playing, you've got people singing and talking and yelling, and you realize these guys weren't paying a damn bit of attention. They didn't see the ship on the radar, which you can clearly see on the VDR data. Everything goes too loud, so you wouldn't have heard any attempts to contact the ship. That happens so many times. Like, oh yeah, no, we were just, everybody was doing their job. Everybody's paying attention. And then you find out people are like this guy watching TV. They're having a party. They're playing music, singing songs. Everybody's there. Sometimes they're sleeping, which is surprisingly common. I mean, it should never happen, but it's not entirely uncommon for people in the middle of the night, in an empty sea, calm weather, the sea's like glass, it's dark, nothing's going on. You've got the steady rumble of the ship's engine, and you just kind of start to nod off. And then you wake up when you've smashed into something. That happens as well. So that's what he's saying. There has been times when the ship almost sank because some toolbot was watching TV. Whether that's true or not is only known to him and the alleged toolbot.
The investigators asked, "So you said as you came up, who was conducting the fuel transfer?" The deckhand replied, "The captain was at the time, but he went to his bunk as he was transferring fuel. I have no idea why. He went and laid down and fell asleep. And I come up out of the hole, waist deep water. I go over, try to get the scuppers open. All the gear is indiscernible out of the side. The side, all the indiscernible on deck. And I immediately go up to another deckhand, and I was like, what's going on here? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what do I mean? I said, we're half sunk is what I mean. Why haven't you got the captain up yet? Oh, well, it ain't my job. You go. And so I went and woke the captain up. And the second I woke him up, he knew what he had done, and he went down and started transferring it back across. And it was pretty flat calm the night this happened to me. Now, had there been a 10-foot sea rolling across the rail that night, it wouldn't have been good." He went on to say, "I run the Allagash, the identical boat, and they hold so much fuel that I never even once transferred fuel. I've been running boats for 30 years, and I've never once turned on a transfer pump. Never. I don't believe in it because stupid stuff like that can happen. I always just open up, the burn and return on the two side tanks, burn them even. You shouldn't be burning on one side or the other. But I see other captains doing the same thing too. You shouldn't have to. I mean, if you got two side tanks, open up all 4 valves, it will burn and return evenly, and then you ain't got to get into transferring fuel. But I don't know what his common routine was. I only made them 2 trips with the Emmy Rose captain." At the same time, when asked about the vessel's overall condition, he did state the following: "I thought it was in very good shape myself. I mean, it looked fine shine to me, but fresh paint does a lot. But my first look at the boat," referring back to when he saw it at the time of purchase, "yeah, the stern ramps looked like they was rusted right out of it. So, but then he painted it all up, so I don't know. But when I was fishing on it, yeah, the boat looking good. But like I said, paint does wonders. When the investigators questioned about weight of fish on board in pounds. And on that night that you're speaking of, where the water on the aft deck, approximately how much fish did you guys have on board? The former deckhand would respond, oh, we probably had about 40,000 on. Okay, and how much do you think that boat can hold? Oh, well, I had 103,000 on the Allagash, so I'd say she can hold 100,000 easily enough. But like I said, I always burn, like when I first got on the boat, the fuel tanks was full. And it's like, why do we have all this extra weight on this boat? We already have all this heavy steel rigging on here and stuff. So myself, as the captain, I only fill my fuel tanks half full, just to try to compensate for all the extra steel that Carlos had added onto the boats.
Now, see, there's a guy right there that is concerned about all the additional steel that's been added to the ship. He knows that it can cause some serious stability problems. So he's even saying he doesn't fill up the fuel tanks all the way because he doesn't want all of the fuel tanks to be full, plus the additional weight from the metal. So he takes on less fuel to compensate for all of this extra steel that's been added to the vessel. Have you covered the SS Politician yet? 22,000 cases of scotch on that bad boy. Well, as a matter of fact, that was in the running for tonight's show, but I decided to go with this. So the Politician may be coming up in the next few weeks. Stand by. Thank you for that super chat, by the way. We got one more super chat to clear. Oh, it's not a super chat; it's just a call. It ain't my job. Most famous words any employee can say. Yep. And it's also one of the famous last words before something bad goes wrong. If you see the ship is sinking, if you see that everybody is waist deep in water, make it your job. What are you going to do when you're sitting there watching your TV going, that ain't my job, and suddenly you're drowning? Dude, if you're ever in a work situation and things are becoming dangerous, be the hero, not the zero. Don't be the loser that says it's an SEP. It's somebody else's problem. No, make it your problem. Be the hero for saving the day. That's the best course of action to go. To be fair, legal voices like butter, you can never have enough. I hope it's not like rancid butter. Well, Derna says, but Jeff, it was not their first rodeo. Yeah, complacency. I assume you're referring to complacency. Complacency can lead to disasters as well. You know what you're doing. It's all routine, so you don't pay as much attention as you should. And that's how people end up in machinery. That's how people end up at the bottom of the ocean. That's why most car accidents are statistically shown to happen within 3 miles of the house, because that's the part of the road you're most familiar with. You don't pay as much attention when you're close to home as you are out in unfamiliar territory. So that complacency can burn people.
Now, if them fuel tanks was full to the top and then put 100,000 on it, probably would have been a little bit different. NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is a primary agency for managing U.S. fisheries and protection of marine mammals and endangered species. One of NOAA's methods to accomplish this is by sending an observer on board various fishing vessels to actively assess the catch and bycatch activities during routine voyages. A NOAA observer who came aboard the Emmy Rose for a ride-along around November 4th through the 12th, just a couple weeks prior to the incident in 2020, was also interviewed by the NTSB and Coast Guard on December 17, 2020. The investigators asked, "Could you tell us about your experience on the Emmy Rose, the one trip that you made on it?" The observer responded, "Yeah, so when I first got to the boat, they did ask me before I stepped on the boat if I was comfortable with weed, and kind of just was like, oh, I kind of just blew off the question. I kind of ignored it, and then I called my coordinator because I was like, we just talked about drugs on the boats before. So I called him to make sure, just to double check with that. And he was like, if you're comfortable going on that, like if it's just the crew, then it's okay." And they...
Yeah. Don't. No. Alcohol and drugs are a huge do not do. A huge no. Yeah, the hippie boat. You don't want a hippie boat. Yeah, it's never 420 time on the ocean. Never. But again, it's these small little operations. You know, if you're on this huge commercial liner, a merchant ship or a cruise ship or something, there's going to be a lot more constraint, a lot more controlled. But when you're on these little family-owned jobs, these little tiny operations, like, it's just us four out here on the water. Nobody will know. Just glug glug. Things happen. Yeah. Don't do it. Don't do it.
We just talked about drugs on the boats before, so I called him to make sure, just to double check with that. And he was like, if you're comfortable going on that, like if it's just the crew, then it's okay.
All right.
And they told me before the captain would not be smoking it. And so I went on. The investigator followed up. Okay, while the vessel was underway, did you actually see 3 crew members smoking weed? The observer replied, yes. I never saw the captain smoking, but I did see the crew.
That's not the point. That's not the point. The captain is not in control of the ship 24 hours a day. Even when he's on the bridge, even when he is doing something, when he's awake and doing something, there's still 3 other people doing something else on the ship, something else important, something else that can impact the safety. Yeah, you know, if you want to fire up a blunt, go ahead, just not at work. And if that means your work takes 4 months, if you can't go that long without lighting up, don't do that work. You are literally putting other people's lives on the line.
Okay, did you see any other drug usage or alcohol usage? No,
Don't
just
go
the
on a
weed and
boat,
cigarettes.
Flux. Don't go on a fishing
And
boat.
was that a daily occurrence or at certain times of the day they were using? It was daily occurrence pretty much in between each haul. Did you ever not feel safe while you were on the boat? I always felt safe just because I never saw the captain using any of the drugs. I stayed away from those drugs all the time. I never saw the captain using it, so I felt safe in that aspect. And I always felt the boat felt stable. I mean, other than like the normal rocking from the waves, but I never felt unsafe. So once they were hauling and setting the nets, would it be around the clock operation, or would the crew seem to get some decent rest? Could you tell if anyone was working around the clock nonstop, or could you see them sleeping and taking naps? Oh, I could see them sleeping and taking naps, especially if it was a longer time that the fish nets were in the water. It could be from 5 to 6 hours. I believe one of them was almost 7 hours. So they would sleep when the nets were in the water after they were done with everything, but they would try to sleep as much as they could in between their breaks. Okay, would you say the captain was in the wheelhouse a majority of the time? Yes. And do you know what time? Was there a set schedule that the captain slept? No, it was pretty much just whenever. I feel like it was more at nighttime, but I don't think it was a set schedule. All right. Did you happen to see anything? Any maintenance or anybody complaining about something with the vessel being off? Just the nets would get a little torn up, and I know the crew would complain about that because the captain he would fall asleep at the wheel. Like he would doze off and would leave the nets in a little too long, like longer than they should have been.
And to me, again, it's just a generalization, but a captain who's falling asleep at the wheel, who is sleeping a little too long, that's a captain who seems to me doesn't trust his crew to do the job or to fill in for him or to take over for a couple of hours while he naps. That kind of sends that signal to me. Whether that was the case or not, I don't know. But those are the vibes I'm getting from that particular part of the story. And we have a super chat here from the G. Clark. Went out on a trawler over here for prawns, crossing the bar at 4 a.m. It was either have a hot one, weed, or a cold one, beers, before we even started nets. Yikes, don't do that. And you know, it's unfortunate that that has to happen, but literally no matter the slightest thing that goes wrong that involves the authorities, the first thing that happens is everybody gets a drug and alcohol screen check from the Coast Guard, from whoever happens to show up on scene. You don't want a single even speck of that anywhere in your blood. Otherwise, that just leads to questions. Questions you may not want to answer. Questions that you may not want to have answered by your blood and by what they find in your cabin, etc. Just don't do it. Ain't worth it. Oof.
So then those nets would get torn up a little bit because they were in longer than they were supposed to be, and the crew would complain about that. I think they had to adjust and fix up the net maybe 2 or 3 times. Did somebody have to go up to the wheelhouse to wake up the captain then? Yeah. And did that happen often? Yeah. I know for like the last day when I had to get all my information about the boat, like about the expenses it costed for this trip and just information about the nets, I went up to the wheelhouse maybe 2 minutes after he was just awake and doing something, and he had already dozed off. I didn't realize he was dozed off, and I asked him if I could ask him the questions then, just so I didn't wait until the morning when he was worried about landing the boat. And he was like, "Oh, did you have to wake me up when I was sleeping to ask me these questions right now?" So he wasn't happy about that.
Oops.
But yeah, the crew would have to wake him up sometimes and be like, "Hey, we need to get the net out of the water." The investigator followed up. "Okay, the scenario when you're fishing and heading to the dock. So you're done fishing, they've got all their catch on board, and they're steaming in to offload. Could you kind of describe who's where and who's doing what at that point?" So captain was steering the boat, he was in the wheelhouse, and the crew would be cleaning up the kitchen and just cleaning up the deck and making sure everything's back in its place. I think when they were done with that, they went to sleep. Okay. Are you pretty sure, though, that as the vessel was heading back to Gloucester, that the master was generally the one always on the helm steering the boat? Yes. The NOAA observer also confirming that they were able to use the boat's satellite phone easily to call loved ones and check in, or if needed, email was also available. Confirming that indeed cell service was non-existent, which is to be expected, but that the satellite phone worked fine, only dropping a call once, but working immediately after when trying the call again.
Yeah, rough. Again, as we talk about so many times on Maritime Monday, it's usually not one thing that causes a disaster. It's very, very rarely just one catastrophic thing that comes out of the blue that just drops out of the sky and causes the ship to sink. It's usually a million tiny little things that just keep adding up until it's too late to do anything about them. Sleepyhead captain, weedy crew, the crappy refitting of the ship, general decay that happens over time, deterioration, all of the things adding up to where you get yourself in a questionable situation, and then as Chosen One says, you get the SS dial tone. You're out of cell range, but again, they have their satellite equipment that seem to work right. Their satellite phone. Yeah, so we're starting to kind of get a picture of what may have gone wrong. And as long as we're here in the mid-grift stream, we should read another super chat from the G. Clark. Oh, and one of the guys who owned a boat got busted by customs. Oh, let's bring it up. One of the guys who owned a boat got busted by customs with 2 SKs and an AK coming back in from outside national border lines. Yeah, guys, gals, boys and girls, children of all ages, don't do that. It's these smaller vessels. These ships gain more suspicious attention than the larger ships because these are ships that just patrol the coastlines, little small guys that can meet up with the smaller ships. They can go somewhere. You don't want to be seen as a drug smuggler or an arms dealer or an arms smuggler on your ship. That's a good way to have your ship confiscated. If the authorities think that your ship is purchased with illicit money or is engaged in the international trafficking of drugs or arms, whether you're doing it or not, they can confiscate your ship. Just the same way they can confiscate your money in an airport if they don't buy your explanation as to why you have more than $10,000. Just like they can nail your car if they want to, if they suspect, they can just rip your car out from underneath you if they suspect that you have been using it as part of a crime, or if you purchased it with ill-gotten gains. And once that happens, whether you did that or not, it can be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to get your things back. The SSL Chapo. American Dreamer asks, do you have triple redundancy, Jeff? Sometimes I just make sure that I'm triply redundant 3 times in a row. That way I get like 9 redundancies. I don't know. I'm just spouting off shit right now. And the J. Clark again with yet another super chat says, I brought these out with me. Actual factual statement. Retired and didn't go to jail. This was from my dad's generation like 30 years ago. Yeah. It's a lucky jail dodge just by what you've told me. Dang. Well, all right. It seems that Corn Pop's little plan is working here. We're in the midstream grift right now. Well, we're about the 2/3 of the way through stream grift. 412 concurrent viewers, 339 likes. Ever since I started doing Corn Pop's little poll, which is, of course, have you liked the video and subscribed? Of course I have, because I rule. And no, I'm damaged, but I will now. 20% of you have said I will do it now. 80% have already done it. And I'm taking you 20% on your word that you've done it now. So we'll just assume this gap of 50 or 60 or so, that was before the poll started. So we'll think of that. But hey, that's a clever little idea. See, you should have brought this to my attention earlier, Corn Pop, and made sure I answered you. Nope, never questioned the Corn Pop. Need a dislike option. Nah, sorry, Stinge. Gonna make you like it and gonna make you pay to tell me you don't want to like it, just like you did, right into my trap. Thank you so much for that, by the way. And pants are prison, says Flux. Yes, Flux, you woke up late, so you missed the fact that part of the reason we started 5 minutes late was I was on Pants Quest. That's that's how little I wear pants in the house, even in the middle of winter. I actually had to go find them. I had difficulty locating pants that were not my work pants. Yes, pants are prison, even in the dead of winter. Thank you so much for the super chat, Flux. I hope you had a great Christmas. Helena T says, Merry Likemas for Jeff. Yep. Need dislike for sure. More accurate poll. Nah. You dislike by just not even showing up. That's how you show a dislike for a video. But you're all here, so we all know. I'm Pop, she's the Pope. Which one of you did it? Corn Pope, you suggested it, huh? Okay. I can tell you're talking about me in the poll, but my internet is losing it, so I can hear every other word. Yes, I'm talking about you. Corn Pope, not Corn Pop, even though I said Corn Pop. But you're right next to each other all the time. Curses. All right, here we go. Get your internet together, Corn Pope. Get yourself situated. Yeah, no skinny jeans for Jeff. None at all. I guess if you like cut the legs and then sewed 2 legs together, maybe. Alrighty, Corn Pope, Pop, Poop, whatever. Let's go. Let's run along here. How are we doing here? We're holding even with subscribers. We gained a couple, lost a couple. Congratulations. We got 10 new members out of this due to our lovely, lovely gifts. Everybody rocks here. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button, which, as you can guess, almost never works. Got some membership levels if you want to get in on that. And y'all take care. Yeah, Flux, I saw you. Flux, I saw you streaming your Red Dead Redemption 2. You once I get done with Elden Ring, which will probably be never. I will go back and restart doing Red Dead Redemption 2, just because of you. All right, here we go.
The Emmy Rose also had triple redundancy in electrical power to the comms equipment. The main engine, a 630 horsepower 12-cylinder Caterpillar. The main generator, another smaller engine, enough to power the entire boat. The backup generator, another smaller engine, enough to power necessities like radio equipment. And backup batteries known to routinely have enough charge to allow for more than enough time to call for help should all the others fail. Investigators are also suspicious of some possible welding that the crew was performing while the vessel was underway. The NOAA observer confirming that they knew of some welding even during their voyage, but only because they overheard the crew discussing it and didn't actually see it taking place. One other vulnerability the investigators are looking into is the lazarette. The lazarette on a vessel like this is the portion of the hull that provides access to the rudder mechanisms and/or prop shaft with the large hatch on top toward the stern. Should this be left open or otherwise fill with water, it could lead to a possibly unrecoverable situation. But interviewees don't have much information on it from the transcripts I've read so far. It's not a portion of a boat that gets accessed very often, like the fish hold or engine room, and thus didn't seem to stick out in interviewees' minds, in my assessment.
Well, see, that's what I was talking about. There's things that can go wrong in places of a ship that you don't go often. You might not even know they exist. That's what we were talking about earlier. So it's not surprising that there might be parts of the ship that just never enter people's heads because there's never any reason to go there. And something goes wrong there, and that would literally be the last place you might check when you're looking for problems.
Investigators also seem to be suspicious of this in combination with the reported 8-foot seas that night, potentially being following seas, as the Emmy Rose steamed toward Gloucester. Ideally, for seagoing vessels, riding out the storm means keeping the bow pointed into oncoming waves or a head sea when conditions are challenging. A following sea, the total opposite, can be deceivingly dangerous, however. When a vessel steams in the same direction as the waves, depending on the vessel's size and type, these can either be a benefit, say when the seas are mild and the easy waves provide some extra momentum, or riding the waves, so to speak, versus when the seas are large enough or have enough momentum that a wave overtakes the vessel instead. If the Emmy Rose was already stern heavy, for example, and worst case scenario, if the lazarette wasn't watertight at that moment, a 6 to 8 foot following swell could have been enough to overwhelm the aft of the vessel. Would this have been quick enough that not even a radio call could be made? It's difficult to say.
So essentially what they're saying there, if you weren't following that, is as we always say, you want to go into the waves. You want the waves to be coming towards you, ideally. If you go parallel to a wave and the wave comes, it can flip you over sideways. What he's talking about here is this lazarette box at the back of the ship, at the stern of the ship. May have been close to the water if the hold is half full of fish. So the boat is going to be heavier towards the back if it's got a lot of fish catch and not so much oil in it. And while the back of the ship is down where this lazarette is, you're getting the waves coming and crashing over the ship from the back, if that's what they were doing. So if they have these following waves, the waves are following the ship, and if they're going faster than the ship, they crash over, water gets into a non-airtight space in the back, and it sinks you and flips you. Corn Pope says, legal advice, I told you 10 times at least for 6 months. I'll email next time. Yeah, I know. Actually, you can't guarantee I see anything in chat unless it's a super chat, because those stick out. Regular chats, I just catch them as I see them. And that is the first time I've ever heard you suggest that to me. I've ever seen you suggesting that to me. Not to say you haven't done it. It's saying that's the first time I've noticed it. So email is the best way to get in touch with me.
The naval architect in his interview insisting that the vessel would needed to have capsized completely and near instantly to create such a situation. When these vessels have fish in their holds, it's also crucial they take stability into account when dividing their catch amongst the pens. These pens are not only meant to divide species, but allow the crew to control how the weight is distributed. In addition, The ice used to chill the live catch, especially in a vessel with no additional refrigeration like the Emmy Rose, will melt and create liquid in these holds. Bilge pumps are always prepared to pump this out or de-water the holds, but another phenomenon all boats of any size must always take into account is the free surface effect. The free surface effect is the tendency of liquids, and similarly of large quantities of small objects, like fish, shrimp, grain, or even just heavy loose gear or cargo, whose behavior approximates that of liquids, moving in response to changes in the attitude of a craft's cargo holds, decks, or liquid tanks in reaction to induced motions like waves, winds, or vessel maneuvers. Or to oversimplify, when a liquid tends to slosh around.
And there you go.
Only
over.
in vessels where the quantity of material is enough and moves to one side, suddenly, the forces can be so great it overcomes the vessel's ability to right itself, in extreme cases causing sudden capsizing, like we've seen in so many roll-on, roll-off vessels. The naval architect stating, so you've got the heavier gear on board, you've reduced the stability slightly, and then you lose the rudder seal or you lose the shaft seal, and the boat starts to slowly take on water, and now you throw a free surface into it. Boats don't just disappear without something happening. There was a catastrophic event that caused this boat to capsize, and the investigator interjecting, is that your opinion? You think it capsized? Oh yeah, I absolutely think this boat capsized. Boats don't disappear without a mayday if they didn't flip over. If you got the boat heeled almost to the rail, it's going to have no range of stability in that direction. It's going to want to roll that way. And then, if you throw free surface into the mix, and you've got that fluid moving over, then you can certainly get the boat into trouble.
Yeah, and see, that's what we were talking about earlier, where something has to happen. It's literally what I said is something has to happen for a ship to just disappear, to just suddenly go off the radar. If you even have a few minutes, there's likely chance to make a radio call or a satellite phone call or something to let people know what's happening. But to just be there and then not be there, something has had to happen. So it can't be a very, very slow sinking. It's got to be something like the vessel flipping over, capsizing that quick. It catches a bad wave, something like that. It's got to be a very, very quick thing that negates any possibility of deploying a lifeboat, getting safety gear on, getting life jackets on, calling anybody. This had to be a sudden, instantaneous accident.
So that would be, with a combination of the two, enough to obviously trim the boat, turtle or capsize the boat, in your opinion? Yeah, I mean, if you got all that fuel on one side, and then depending on the amount of free surface you have in the fish hold, and then you induce some type of outside factor, a wave or a gust of wind, the boat could certainly go. Investigators are also looking into the vessels that were in the vicinity that night. So far, there is only one listed on the official report, another fishing vessel, and no further details. The manager of the Emmy Rose was the type to stay in relatively close contact with the vessel, but didn't receive any communications from them the night of the sinking. However, the father of one of the deckhands did have the following to say regarding the night of the incident. The investigators asked, when he would get underway on these trips, would he ever reach out to you, communicate with you while he was underway? Yeah, he'd call once in a while and so forth, let us know when he was coming back, going out. Did he call you on this last trip? Yes, he did. When did he call you? It was probably between midnight and 12:30. Yeah, the date of the sinking. Our conversation was about buying a part. He wanted to know if I had ordered a part for his 4x4. And then all of a sudden he just said, I gotta go, something happened, and that was it. Never heard from him again until you guys contacted us. And he didn't say anything else after no. Just, I gotta go. That was it. All we mainly talked about was the clutch assembly for his 4x4. He did say they was coming into Cape Cod. I thought they would be going into Gloucester, but I don't know if he's got to go by that way or what. Is that typical for them, to go to Cape Cod? Not really. They'd go there every once in a great moon, or by their way, or they unloaded their fish in Gloucester. Being 20 miles out, I'm sure they was coming in from someplace. The vessel's manager did have this to say regarding the captain from their conversations in the days prior to the incident. He was going to go back out and fish over the holiday, and as luck would have it, the 20th of this last month was his birthday. He was at sea for his birthday, on his last birthday. That sucks, don't it? I remember calling him and wishing him a happy birthday. We'll get into my final thoughts shortly. As for the safety recommendations and potential lessons learned from the U.S. Coast Guard's report. Recommendation number 1, fishing vessel periodic stability verification. Implement new recommendations requiring commercial fishing vessels 79 feet or greater in length undergo vessel stability periodic verification by a qualified individual every 5 years and/or after a major modification to ensure the vessel is still in compliance with their required stability instructions. Implementing this regulation will ensure that a vessel's profile has not been substantially altered in a manner which adversely affects its stability, including the cumulative effects of all alterations.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. You can make one alteration and it's stable. You can make another alteration and it's stable. But if you just keep making these alterations, at some point it's going to be the straw that broke the camel's back. And this is one that I wholeheartedly agree with. And it's got to be highly maintained. You have to have some incredible enforcement going on in this, whether it's part of the licensing requirements or the yearly inspections or the multi-yearly inspections the ships go through. This needs to be done. 5 years, that might be a little too infrequent. I don't know if you want to do every 3 years, every 4 years, but basically anytime you just do regularly or if you do a major overhaul, and I think if you add a certain percentage of the vessel's weight in steel individually and then a certain percentage cumulatively from the original design, you're required to go through a thorough check. I think that would be a great thing to implement.
Recommendation number 2, fishing vessel required training for operators. Reflect requirements enacted under the Coast Guard Authorization Act of 2010, specifically provisions for individuals in charge of vessels operating beyond 3 nautical miles from the baseline to pass a training program covering certain competencies, including stability. Most fishing vessel operators are unlicensed, and a licensed operator is only required on vessels over 200 gross tons. This new training requirement for operators will help ensure their competency to command the vessel. Recommendation number 3, load line for applicable commercial fishing vessels. Reflect the requirements enacted under the Coast Guard Authorization Act of 2010, requiring applicable commercial fishing vessels to have a load line assigned. Require a fishing vessel built on or before July 1st, 2012.
Have you ever wondered why the ships are different colors? You'll see the hulls of ships being different colors. Depending on they'll have a winter load line and a summer load line. Those are the lines where the maximum loading of the vessel would be that line. As you add weight to the vessel, it sinks lower down in the water. It gets a deeper draft. And just because of temperature fluctuations, everything is different in the summer and the winter. So you have a summer load line and a winter load line. And he's saying that even these small fishing vessels, these small fishing boats should have these load lines.
That undergoes a substantial change to the dimension of or type of vessel completed after July 1st, 2012, or a later date set by the Coast Guard to comply with an alternate load line compliance program developed in cooperation with the industry. A load line indicates the minimum safe freeboard to which a vessel may be loaded. Fishing vessels are often modified such that their dimensions are changed, or they are converted to a different type of fishing vessel. When this action is taken, the loading conditions and seaworthiness of the vessel can be affected. Recommendation number 4, chemical testing for commercial fishing vessel crew members. Implement new regulations requiring certain crew members aboard commercial fishing vessels to be subject to a chemical testing program. It's recommended that the commandant should require pre-employment, random, and reasonable cause drug testing for those crew members who are in safety-sensitive positions on board documented commercial fishing industry vessels operating beyond 3 nautical miles of the baseline.
Absolutely
Individuals
agree.
in charge and crew aboard commercial fishing vessels less than 200 gross tons are not required to hold merchant mariner credentials. Therefore, the only instance when they're required to be drug tested is after a serious marine incident. Instituting a pre-employment, random, and reasonable cause drug testing program covering all crew members who are in safety-sensitive positions would reduce the risk to crews and vessels. Recommendation number 5. It's recommended that the Fishing Vessel Safety Division provide guidance and instruction to vessel examiners to conduct fishing vessel stability training and outreach, specifically to include proper freeing port design and the importance of maintaining watertight integrity. Recommendation number 6. Commercial fishing vessel examiners to conduct crew endurance management system and anti-fatigue training and outreach. It's recommended that the Fishing Vessel Safety Division provide guidance and instruction to vessel examiners to conduct education and outreach to promote awareness and provide crew endurance management system and anti-fatigue training. Fatigue experienced by commercial fishing vessel crew members while fishing is a chronic issue and often a contributing factor to marine casualties within the commercial fishing vessel community. This investigation revealed a latent unsafe condition where the crews of the Emmy Rose, who had been working in the commercial fishing industry for their entire adult life, had grown accustomed to working and operating vessels while fatigued. It can offer much insight.
Yeah, see, that's the deal, especially with these trawlers, these net trawlers. You're not fishing, you're not making money. So they try to overextend themselves. You get the situations where the captain is the only one that has any ability to sail the vessel. There's nobody else that can take over for him when he sleeps, which is what we were talking about earlier, to where you get the captains just trying to be working 24 hours a day, and that also leads to the drug abuse. Maybe we need to do something like they have in the trucking industry, where you have these mandatory logs. You have to log your time. You're only allowed to work so many hours a day. But again, how do you check it on the vessel? It always comes down to enforcement. Can you enforce things?
Into where investigators are in their process whenever preliminary recommendations are provided. It's not unheard of for either the NTSB or Coast Guard to post them partway through an investigation like this. And it's also no secret the commercial fishing crews sometimes push just about everything to its limit. Their vessel, the conditions, regulations, especially themselves. Creating these, even just potential lessons learned, can do no harm in promoting awareness and helping future mariners return home safely to their families every time.
Those are the 4 people that were on the vessel. So that was another brick and mortar video about another maritime accident. The Emmy Rose. And as I mentioned, I've been in contact with him by email, and we're trying to work out a time in January where he can join us for one of our Maritime Mondays to talk about who he is, why he does what he does, how he does what he does, and then to actually go through one of these with us so we can see what other information he has that wasn't included in here, and he can get some of my insights as well. So hopefully in January, we'll be able to get here on a stream with Brick and Mortar with Sam himself. That'll be great, I think. I look forward to it. I've been trying to get it to happen for months now. Finally got in touch with him, so that's a good thing. But this isn't the end of our story. We've got a couple of other news items to go through here related to this. Before we do that, let's clear off Vice's posse in Red Dead Redemption 2. Oh, give me a chance to finish Elden Ring. It's only been a year since the game came out. I'll tell you, that game is rough. It's a time sucker. I think I'm 113 hours into it now, and I don't appear to be anywhere close to finished. I'm guessing this is going to be a 200-hour game. My problem with gaming is I'm a perfectionist. I'm a completionist. I have to do absolutely everything I can possibly find. So I spend way too much time just walking around the map and then forgetting what I finished and what I didn't finish, or revisiting sites and going through things. It's crazy. I'm the worst video game player ever. It'll take me probably another year to finish Elden Ring, because I've only got a couple hours a week that I can devote to it. But we'll cross the Red Dead Redemption 2 bridge when we get there. Well, that's why I haven't finished it. I started Red Dead Redemption 2 on my Xbox a couple of years ago. Then my Russian friends all pooled in and bought me a PlayStation 4 with a couple of games, and so I stopped that to play those, and then things just spiraled out of control, and I think I've turned my Xbox on twice in the last 2 years. It's just pretty much been PlayStation since then. To be fair, what makes a licensed operator more capable or less capable? Well, you have to go through classes, you have to go through training. You learn about your ship, you get your practice. It's sort of like saying what makes a licensed car driver more capable or less capable than a non-licensed driver. You'd think and hope that the education, the familiarity, the licensing requirements and things would make him a little bit safer and a little bit more capable of safely operating a fishing vessel. Not trying to be smarmy. I'm truly asking who verifies what. Well, that's what they're saying here is the under 200 tons of ship under 200 tons. It's really, at least it seems to be from what they're saying here, that there's not a lot of regulation that goes on. Not a lot of operator requirements, crew experience things. So you can just get people, throw them on a ship and go, hey, you're now a crew member. Yay. Oh, I just bought this boat. Let's go out to sea. If the vessel's small enough. And so that's what the NTSB wants to bring about. They want to bring about these changes, so they make these recommendations. And we're in the middle of a stream. We're in the middle of an investigation. These investigations can take years, especially in this case where it's under 800 feet of water. It's not easy to get to. It's not easy to raise. So we just kind of have a scant information and evidence to go off of. These investigations can take a lot of time. So they've issued these preliminary findings. We're far from the final findings. Let's bring up this one thing here. Oh, we got one more. Hang on. Read one super chat here from the G. Clark. 200 hours in Elden Ring and then on to NG+. There's just so much to do, yet nothing to do at the same time. Oh, great. So, yeah, it looks like I was right. 200 hours from me. So I'm about halfway through the game. Ugh. I've done so much. And the way Elden Ring is set up is I said I'm 113 hours into this, and just now I'm sort of kind of started getting a feel and an idea of what's supposed to be happening in this game. It's crazy. I'm just a huge Souls game guy. I've got like a Souls games shrine in a part of my house. All right, let's look at this particular news item here. I'm only about 20 hours in, and my weapon isn't even +3. I just laugh because I was there once. The NTSB unsecured deck hatches, down flooding likely sank Emmy Rose. This is from September 14th of this year, which is part of the report that Brick and Mortar was just relying on. The Emmy Rose, or this was the thumbnail photo. The Emmy Rose, an 82-foot ground fish trawler based in Portland, Maine, was lost at sea on November 23rd, 2020. The main groundfish trawler, Emmy Rose, with her crew of 4 lost in November 2020, probably capsized, flipped over, when water collected on the aft deck and down-flooded the vessel through unsecured deck hatches, the NTSB reported. So that's basically what we were saying earlier, where the water is coming up over the back of the ship somehow, over the stern of the ship, and then it's just running down into the vessel itself or going into this back hatch thing that wasn't secured, and then suddenly you just go, we're gone. You just lose stability and it's over. So that's what they're focusing on from a preliminary aspect. The agency's accident report calls for the Coast Guard to ensure that commercial fishing vessel safety examinations include inspections of hatch covers to determine if they're watertight and adequately secured. Covers on freeing ports, openings around a vessel's main deck to drain water off, must likewise be inspected to make sure the covers are constructed to allow water to readily flow outboard as intended and not inboard, the report says. Yeah, you want these valves and these holes to let water out, but not let water in. That's an important aspect of keeping your ship sailing. The NTSB reiterated its call for, this is an important thing here too, reiterated its call for mandatory personnel locator beacons to be carried by commercial fishermen and other mariners, essentially pocket EPIRBs. PLBs signaling the satellite network can guide rescuers to individual survivors at sea. We talked about the El Faro cargo disaster. We talked about the Scandies Rose. We talked about both of these cases where the people went overboard and they were lost. The Scandies Rose went down. The El Faro, that was the one you recall where the people kept getting swept off the ship. The rescuers couldn't get to them. They couldn't find them. So they want to make it so that every individual sailor has his own emergency locator beacon so that they can track on those and not just the ship and hope they find people drifting around the ship. So yeah, we've talked about both of these cases. Coming after the El Faro cargo ship disaster in 2015 with 33 lost and the 2019 Scandies Rose fishing vessel sinking in Alaska with 5 dead, the Emmy Rose was the latest example of how PLBs could have led rescuers to missing mariners. It shouldn't take 3 marine tragedies to recognize the vital importance of personal locator beacons, said NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy in a statement announcing the Emmy Rose report. Given their wide availability and relatively low cost, I urge all fishing vessel operators to provide crew members with PLBs today. Don't wait for a mandate from the Coast Guard. If the Emmy Rose crew had access to these devices, perhaps some of them would still be with us today. And I think it mentioned it earlier in the note. What happens with these EPIRBs is when they get submerged in water, they're automatically set off, and that automatically starts pinging a satellite, and that's how they track you. The 4 people were never recovered. The crew was inbound for Gloucester, Massachusetts to deliver their catch when the Coast Guard in Boston received an automated distress message at 1:30 a.m. November 2030 from Emmy Rose's emergency position indicating radio beacon about 27 miles off Provincetown, Mass. Again, they didn't do it. Something happened so quickly, they couldn't get off an emergency message or a mayday or anything like that. They were there, then they weren't. Searchers using side scan sonar found the sunken Emily Rose about nearly 800 feet down in May 2021, about 3.5 miles from the EPIRB reported sinking. So that's what we're talking about. The EPIRB goes off and it continues to drift. The ship continues to drift and then it's caught in the currents as it's sinking, and they can be miles apart, just like here. So even though you locate this signal beacon, that doesn't mean the ship is right below it. In 2021 September, a remotely operated vehicle, an ROV, was used to survey the wreck. NTSB investigators concluded that 2 freeing ports designed to drain water off the Emily's deck were closed. So these water release valves were closed. Water started accumulating on the deck, which caused the vessel to list starboard, further reducing the Emmy Rose's already compromised stability, the agency reported. Although investigators could not definitively determine the source of the initial flooding, it most likely began through the lazarette hatch cover. That's that hatch cover at the back where they were talking about they didn't go very often and not many people even thought about it, which did not have securing mechanisms and therefore could not be made watertight, according to the NTSB. So it was never watertight. That allowed following seawater that flows in the same direction as the vessel, and accumulating water on deck to flood down into the lazarette, the compartment below the deck at the aft end of a vessel. Working with analysis from the Coast Guard Marine Safety Center, NTSB investigators found at the time of the sinking, the Emmy Rose likely did not meet existing stability criteria, making it susceptible to capsizing, the agency said. That's what I said from the beginning. It's got to have that stability. You keep adding stuff, you keep ripping stuff off, you're going to change the overall stability of the ship. You're going to make it unstable. Accidents are going to happen. People are going to die. The vessel was at increased risk from sea conditions on its return course toward Gloucester, with east-southbound winds and quartering seas that put water on the aft working deck. The NTSB concluded that the probable cause of the sinking of the fishing vessel Emmy Rose was a sudden loss of stability, capsizing, caused by water collecting on the aft deck and subsequent flooding through the deck hatches, which were not watertight or weathertight because they had covers that did not have securing mechanisms, contrary to the vessel's stability instructions and commercial fishing vessel regulations. So, in the process of ripping things off and sticking things on that ship, it appears that the lazarette cover securing mechanisms had been removed and not replaced. The 82-foot Emmy Rose was wrapping up its trip November 22nd when Captain Robert Blethen Jr. called to their destination in Gloucester to report they had about 45,000 pounds of fish and expected to arrive at around 6 a.m. the next morning, according to the NTSB narrative of the accident. After fishing for another 4 hours, the Emmy Rose got underway about 6:30 p.m. for Gloucester at about 7 knots, its typical transit speed. The National Weather Service forecast that evening called for southeast winds of 15 to 20 knots and gusts up to 25 knots and seas 5 to 8 feet, with patchy fog and a chance of showers after midnight. Throughout the evening, crew members used the vessel's satellite phone to communicate with shoreside contacts, the NTSB report notes. At 6:48 p.m., one of the deckhands called his girlfriend and told her they'd completed fishing and were headed to Gloucester to unload the catch. He said he was at the helm but was being relieved to go to sleep. The girlfriend told investigators that the deckhand said it was the biggest catch they'd ever had, and she heard other crew members in the background laughing, giggling, and so excited to be coming home. Around 11 p.m., the Emily Rose passed within 1.3 miles of the fishing vessel Blue Canyon, then maneuvered away from the Blue Canyon and continued on its course for Gloucester at 7 knots, according to the NTSB report. The captain of the Blue Canyon told investigators that he did not communicate with the Emmy Rose crew and believed he saw crew members moving around the aft deck under illuminated deck lights as the boat passed. At 1 a.m. on November 23rd, the Emmy Rose was identified on the National Marine Fisheries Service vessel monitoring system to be 27 miles northeast of Provincetown, on a course of 277 degrees at 7 knots. This was the last VMS position transported by the Emily Rose. And this would be, this is the track line from the vessel. It shows where they were on November 21st, November 22nd, and November 23rd. So they went out, they do their thing, they do your fishing around here, trawl, you head back in. Do some more trawling over here. You start back, and then they disappeared right at this spot. These are real-time displays that every certain amount of time will ping yourself on this, and that'll plot you on this radar. That if you go to sites like marinetraffic.com, you can sign up for systems to pretty much track any vessel in the world using this system. It's kind of fun. I like. Whenever I have downtime at work, I just track ships. It's kind of cool to see where they are, where they're headed, where they've been. 1:29 a.m., the Coast Guard Rescue Coordination Center in Boston received an alert from the emergency position indicating radio beacon, the EPIRB, registered to the Emmy Rose. This initial unlocated first alert position was about 2.4 miles southwest from the 1 a.m. VMS position. So here we go, between 1 a.m. and 1:29 a.m., probably right there at 1:29 a.m., something happened. Coast Guard watchstanders notified the vessel's shoreside manager in Maine, and he attempted several times to contact the crew of the Emmy Rose on the satellite phone and via email, but there was no response. During the next 3 hours, over a dozen subsequent signals were transmitted as the EPIRB drifted towards the northwest until it was recovered by the Coast Guard. There were no VHF transmissions received. There were no radio transmissions. Radio transmissions received from the Emmy Rose. At 1:54 a.m., the 210-foot Coast Guard cutter Vigorous was diverted from its location about 12 miles from the last known position of the Emmy Rose to assist with search and rescue efforts. At 2:28 a.m., the Coast Guard launched an MH 60-ton helicopter from the Cape Cod Air Station. Both arrived at the Emily Rose's reported EPIRB position and began searching about 3 a.m. Within minutes, the helicopter crew located an inflated life raft and notified the cutter crew of its position. The cutter crew launched a rescue boat and found no crew members in the life raft. they reported a strong scent of diesel in the area. So we're leaking fuel. And a lot of times it's just fuel from the engine room, fuel that's like sloshed around the engine room on the deck and whatnot, and just leaks out of the tanks once the ship goes upside down. At 3:26 a.m., a helicopter crew located the Emmy Rose EPIRB about 500 yards from the life raft in a debris field with a fish tote and some other small objects. Throughout the early morning hours, the Coast Guard deployed a 47-foot motor lifeboat and a fixed-wing aircraft to search for survivors. The searchers found an estimated 600-foot oil sheen and later that morning recovered the EPIRB, life raft, one life ring, and two wooden fish hold hatch covers. After searching for over 2,200 square miles over a 38-hour period, the Coast Guard suspended search efforts shortly after 5 p.m., November 24th. In May 2021, investigators contacted Mine Technology to conduct a side scan sonar search to locate the sunken Emmy Rose on the seafloor and assess its condition. Two side scan sonars were brought aboard the NOAA research ship, and that's what we talked about at the beginning of the show with the news item there. On May 19th, the Emmy Rose was located about 3.5 miles west of the last VMS position at a depth of 794 feet. These are the images. It was sitting upright on the floor with the bow oriented at 135 degrees southeast direction, and both outriggers fully deployed. It's amazing the ship is just sitting there, just like it went straight down. With the sonar imagery in hand, the Coast Guard and NTSB asked Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute to conduct a ROV survey. So they dropped the ROV robot down there to take pictures of it. The ROV inspected the condition of the freeing ports. Those are the release valves on the sides of the vessel there. On the port side of the vessel, the aftmost freeing port was open. The next freeing port forward was closed. The next freeing port forward was partially open and had its plate hanging through the port, the report notes. The remaining freeing ports on the port side were open. On the starboard side, the two aftmost freeing ports were closed. The next two freeing ports forward were open, and both had chain and lines hanging out of the ports. So basically, it seems like about half of the port, these emptying ports, these release valves were open. The freeing ports under the outriggers were not able to be assessed by the ROV for inspection. So in summing up their findings, the NTSB investigators focused on the freeing ports and deck hatches as the likely source of downflooding. On the vessel's aft, that's the stern, the back, aft working deck was the lazarette hatch, which was located between the nets on the stern and covered with a non-watertight steel cover, which rested on the hatch's 6-inch high hatch combing. It's just like the rim, the lip around the hatch. And then they repeat how the waves likely came over from the back, quickly filled it up, and flipped the ship. That led the investigators to conclude that although a definitive source of initial flooding could not be determined, flooding of the Emmy Rose most likely began through the lazarette hatch cover, which did not have securing mechanisms, therefore could not be made watertight, allowing seas and accumulating water on deck to downflood the lazarette. They make the emphasis again to have individual personal locator beacons. They first recommended that in 2015 after the El Faro. They did it again after the Scandies Rose was sunk. And two of the Scandies Rose crew were rescued. The other 5 were never found. The NTSB concluded in both investigations that personal locator beacons would have aided search and rescue operations by providing continuously updated and correct coordinates of crew member locations. This recommendation remains open. Yeah, that's where we sit. There's another news item here, another news article about it here. I'm just scrolling through to see if there's anything that hasn't been covered in the video or the last article. Okay, failed to drain properly, not watertight. Oh, this is an important thing. We're bringing it up for this one point. This is actually an important thing to note. You know, the NTSB has made this recommendation 3 times to have personal locator beacons. The NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, cannot mandate changes. It recommends inspections and makes recommendations, but they can't mandate changes. They can't require changes to be made. That's usually the Coast Guard that mandates the requirements. So the NTSB suggests changes, and it's up to the Coast Guard usually whether or not to implement these changes. And this is where we're talking about the limitation thing here. A judge awarded nearly $1 million in damages to the families of the fishermen, ordered the distribution of the insurance proceeds from the boat owner, Aaron and Melissa Inc. So they have the insurance proceeds that cover up to that amount, and then you distribute it according, amongst the people. And that's kind of it. It's the another tragedy that didn't need to happen. It'll be interesting to see what, if any, conclusions are ultimately reached in the final report stage of the NTSB's investigation and reporting. But for now, it seems like there was a lot of these factors that always come into play when you're dealing with tragedy. You've got people dicking around with the ship, making changes that they probably shouldn't be making. The stability checks aren't being done. Whether or not it played any role whatsoever in the accident, I have no way of knowing, but there's at least anecdotal evidence of drug use on the ship, of people sleeping on duty, including the captain, fatigue, inexperienced crew. And all of this adds up. But it seems like the stability factor and the refitting of the ship was one of the primary causes. It's unfortunate. Yeah, statuesque Mist says it's so unfortunate. It is. Most accidents are completely avoidable and completely preventable. But they happen, and it's unfortunate. If you get in a car accident, you don't sink 800 feet below the surface of the road. If your engine quits on your car, you don't sink to the bottom of the ocean. You get out and you call your insurance. But when you're out in the middle of the water in freezing temperatures, freezing cold, you die. And that's one of the risks that these small fishing boat people take on, and it's incredible the stress that those jobs bring. It's incredible the amount of work that they bring. It brings in huge amounts of money in a very short period of time, but you got to work for it, you got to suffer for it, and you take a lot of risks. And even if you don't take the risks personally, you're putting your lives in the hands of the officers, the captain, the owner, the ship itself. The fact that you're trusting that there hasn't been any shenanigans going on and you're seaworthy. That the equipment is up to date, the equipment is well maintained, that your engine's not going to conk out, you're not going to get flipped by a wave because you can't sail, you can't maneuver. You are putting your life in the hands of so many people and so many pieces of machinery. Yeah, no, fishing boat is one of the most dangerous jobs on planet Earth. That brings us to the end of another one of our things here, another one of our festive days. We'll have to do something fun for next Maritime Monday. If I can remember, we should do the Bodie McBoatface story and a couple of other lighthearted stories of the sea, and maybe some more videos of stupid people doing stupid stuff on the ocean. Our poll today was, have you liked the video and subscribed? Of course, because I rule. 79% no, I'm damaged, but I will now. Was 21%. We have 419 people watching now, 453 likes. We'll end the poll here, and we'll wrap this up with, again, we'll do another weekend preview, but I did want to make this announcement. the date of the next, we're after the 2-hour mark. So if you haven't been following my channel recently, or if this is your first time, we do something here called Fuck It Friday, where we just throw monetization out the window straight from the beginning. We cover stories we don't normally cover otherwise. We get up with shenanigans. We have a whole long line of guests. And now I think it's hilarious because a lot of like law tubers and law tube adjacent people and other people we've had on, other guests we've had on, actually they lobby to be on the fucking Friday streams because they're so much fun. The whole premise of that is that's my once a month heavy grift. The whole thing is nothing but a grift for super chats. The rules are $100 for a shot of premium whiskey. So $100 shots get a premium whiskey and aggregates of 100. So $10 shots, $25 shots, whatever, or whatever mix gets a shot of a lesser whiskey. We didn't have as much as we usually do on our fucking Fridays last month because there was some overlap and some prepaid things. But we should be into a bottle of about $325 whiskey this time, because what we do is 25% of whatever I make on a fucking Friday stream goes into buying a premium bottle of whiskey for the next month. And so the more money I bring in on a super chat, the more expensive whiskey I drink in shots the following month. And as you can see back there, this is probably 1/3 of my whiskey collection. I have an amazing amount of whiskey. I'm a huge whiskey connoisseur, whiskey aficionado, and even drinking Jack Daniels in shots kind of creeps me out. I think all whiskey should be consumed slowly, carefully, get the nuanced shots, enjoy every whiskey. So the fact that you degenerates make me drink shots of top tier, top shelf premium whiskey crushes my soul every time I do it. Last month, what did we do? I can't remember. My memory fades. Oh, last month we did a 15-year Dalmore was the lower level, and a 21-year-old Glen Grant as the premium whiskey. We have a lot more options for this month because we're down about the 300 range. We'll do what we can to get me liquored up. The record last time was 35 shots I did, and I did the last 8 very quickly and immediately ended the stream and ran to bed. It took a day and a half to recover basically from that. But I was so well prepared. I went through a whole preparation regimen, which I don't think I can do this time. So things probably will not go so well this fucking Friday. So mark your calendars for the first weekend of January. Our next fucking Friday will be Friday, January 6th, 2023. Invitations will be sent out to other YouTubers to join me. We'll do the grift. We'll make a crap ton of money, I hope, so I don't have to talk about it for the rest of the month. I do very little grifting during the month just because we usually clear that off right on fucking Friday. So we'll tell stories, have guests, drink a lot. You guys love it. I love it, even though it takes me a little bit to recover. How could you forget you cried into your shot glass? I saw it. No, I never cried into my shot glass. That never happened. See, that's the thing, is I very rarely forget what happens. I forget like minor details, but I would never forget something like that. Yeah, no, I ran straight to bed. There was no crying in my shot glass because I'm a man. I don't do that. So, all right, that's coming up. Mark your calendars. January 6th is the first fucking Friday of the year. American Dreamer says, did they recover the bodies? Did I miss that? No. No bodies were ever found. No bodies were ever discovered. Hey, what's up, Strawberry? What's up, Maggie? Hey. No bodies were ever recovered. Sad story. So that, mark your calendars. January 6th. Now I feel bad for saying fuck it Friday after talking about never finding dead bodies. Oh no, I was not so wasted I forgot. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing a series of short news stories, probably 15, 20 minutes each. And we'll do it in a way so that I can just go back, download the whole show, clip out each one of those news stories, and then I can upload them as shorter videos throughout the week. So you'll sort of be watching me record news stories, and we can handle super chats, conversation, other things in the middle of the story. You know, so we'll do work on that. Where was this? So one thing here that. Yeah, you forgot you had Jessica Reloaded on the stream the other day. Yeah, I did. I said, but then I started thinking about it, and I vaguely remember her being there without a camera. She said she had her camera on, but I don't remember the camera being on. So, but yeah, I don't forget the I kid legal devices. I know you kid, but hey, don't ever disparage my drinking abilities. You got American Dreamer. Here's to another circle around the planet. Absolutely. Will we ever get to see Blackout Jeff? No, I have never blacked out in my entire life. Ever. There's been a couple of times I'm not really clear on the details of coming home. Like I remember getting in taxis, but I don't really remember getting out of taxis. But I've never blacked out ever in my life. I've never thrown up either. I've never thrown up from being drunk. It's just that I just don't have it. I'll fall asleep if I'm incredibly tired, but otherwise I can't fall asleep, I can't throw up, and I don't black out. So I just have to sit there and suffer until the alcohol processes it. There will be no dry January. We'll be celebrating an anniversary, perchance. Right in the Capitol in your grifting show. Coincidence? You rebel, you. Yep. Oh, I was wasted. I just don't show it. See, that's the thing. It takes an incredible amount of alcohol for me to actually show how drunk I am. And that causes problems because people don't think I'm drunk. Like, you're not even drunk. I'm like, yeah, no, I really am. Like, no, you're not even trying. Try it. Here, drink some more. And they keep forcing me to drink. And I'm like, no, I'm way drunker than you. I just don't act like it. When I start to really act like it, I'm liquored up. It's always 420 on a commercial boat. Get over yourself, Jeff. Yeah, whatevs. Don't do it. So we got sidetracked. Let's get back to what's happening this week so we can wrap it up. That'll be January 6th. Mark your calendars for the January fucking Friday, January 2023, the first one of the year. Bring your money. Throw all of your money at me on that day. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing these short stories that I talked about, updates on the Idaho case, and a couple of other news stories that are cropping up. Just want to do 15, 20-minute bites. Wednesday, we'll be starting a Courtney Clenny investigation. Her interrogation video from the time that she beat up her now dead boyfriend when in Las Vegas. We'll do that first interrogation, get through that. Thursday's O.J. Simpson Day. We're going to be starting the cross-examination of Dennis Fung, criminologist, by Barry Scheck, and that will go for a very, very long time. Friday, we'll probably start the second Courtney Clenny interrogation, which was after she murdered, allegedly, her boyfriend. That's a longer one. It's about 4.5 hours. We'll break it up into 2 parts if we need to. But there's a whole lot of the that Texas border agent trial guy thing where there's a whole lot of time of her just sleeping in the interrogation. So we might be able to squeeze it into 1. Might have to go into 2. But that's kind of what we're looking at for the rest of the week. If something comes up in the meantime that demands an immediate stream or immediate attention, we'll bump things around and work on it that way. That's kind of what we got planned. When Jeff is tanked, he doesn't stumble, he lists. I do tend to list a bit. Let's see. Checking for some last comments here. I get the spins if I try to sleep drunk. Yeah, that's it. That's why I can't sleep if I'm drunk. The room does this spinning thing, which I learned on this really, really, really bad drunk several years. It was the first Valentine's Day after me and my wife split up, and my friend and his wife had also recently split up. So we went out and we basically drank each an entire bottle of vodka in about an hour. And then we went out for more drinks, and somehow I ended up in a nightclub, which was wild. But yeah, I learned a trick that if you just lay on the edge of the bed and you put one foot on the floor, it really does anchor you to the floor. So there have been times when I have slept with one foot on the floor while laying in bed. That stops the spinning. Try that. Dude, it's the foot anchor. You got to anchor your foot to the earth thing. All right. I think that's all let's see. Yep. I think that's all the super chats we've got out of the way. We've got the weekend preview out of the way. We got that comment out of the way. Corn Pops, Nick Cage. I must have missed that one. What are we talking about? Everybody's saying Nick Cage. I will never be able to think about your name not in Nick Cage voice. My fuzzy nuts. Okay. All right. That's it. We are all done here. I hope you guys had a great time. Again, I always hate saying I hope you guys had fun listening to me talk about a bunch of people die. But that's what happens on Maritime Monday. We'll try to do something a little more lighthearted. Like I said, the Bodie McBoatface saga. That's always a fun one. And some other time and some other things that are on the lighter side of maritime disasters. All right, folks. No, I say fuzzy nuts all the time. It was worth it just to hear fuzzy nut. Take care, all. We'll be spending this last week here of 2020 together, all the way up through Friday. Then we'll let you go about your own business for the New Year's Eve times. Hope to see y'all here. Thank you for stopping by, mods. You guys, I forgot to thank you, mods, at the beginning of the show. Those of you that are just coming back for the replay crew, thanks, everybody. Can't do this without the mods. The mods are great. I love all you guys. People in the chat, thank you for being here. Hey, what's up? Oh, looks like Strawberry's telling me to shut up. She wants to play with the ball. All right, we'll go throw the ball around when I get off here. Hang on, bud. Thanks for being here in chat. Those of you that are listening as you drive around, as you sit at your desk, as you do housework, whatever it is you're doing, if you just have us on for the background, stop in later. Hit that like button. Leave a comment. Even if you're watching now, come back later. Leave a comment if you remember. YouTube loves the comments, that after live stream engagement. They like that. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Are we still doing the Yon case tomorrow? Asks Becca has thoughts. What I'm doing, I'm going to be redoing the thumbnail. But basically the Yon case, the background of the Yon case we'll do tomorrow, but we'll still probably devote an entire show to him next week. So we'll do a bit of a background on the Yon case. It's still part of tomorrow. All right, folks. Grateful to have you here. Thank you for the super chats we got. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the subscriptions. Thank you for everything. Have a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, night, whatever it is, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I will see you tomorrow at the same time, 8 a.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. UK, midnight Canberra, Australia time. Until then, enjoy your legal vices. Bye now.